There's also opportunities for networking. If you join NI Game Dev Network, they have a thing every Thursday at 10 a.m. called Lean Coffee, where you can have a virtual coffee with a couple of people that are already in the industry, and they debate certain topics. And the host for it, Leela, has managed to start her own little networking base through this. They had, every time somebody comes in, like let's say, oh, we're trying to find a 3D modeler lately, then they would just say, it's like, oh, I'm trying to get out there. Would you mind taking a look at my portfolio? So they end up finding work just through Lean Coffee alone. And it's a great opportunity to try. Most of these other ones also have job opportunities posted in a small, like different, a little thread within the Discord. I use it all the time to find jobs, especially in producing or project management, but there's tons in the creative side as well. They have a shameless plugging thing, which is great, just so that you can get your socials out there and stuff like that. They also have events. So you should find your local game dev network. It's not only great for networking, but it offers so much more. So I've used the CV and portfolio feedback, and my CV looks a lot better than it was. They give you a way to prepare you essentially for any interview, and people can take a look and be like, that doesn't look quite professional, or that's not something quite in the field that you're looking for and the way you've written it. You get advice and guidance. Lots of people are so open to helping you and, helping you try and get into the industry in general. I found that myself. There's always weekly networking opportunities. There's job postings, all this other stuff. The shameless plugging, I'll just go into that a bit more. Let's say that you just got your new job. Then you can just go in there and just say, hey, I got my new job, and there'll be other people there cheering for you. So you feel supported within your own network. LinkedIn. LinkedIn is great for networking. Not only is there webinars such as this, but there is also a way for you to get e-learning and get certified in a lot of the stuff that you're currently studying or want to study. And these can be displayed on your profile, and it is great for potential employers to see that. If you're really good at Maya, then you can just take a quick skills test and you can get certified just like that, just by answering a couple of the questions. There's also groups. I'm currently in ones for project management and producing, and it's other people that are either within the industry or people that are trying to get into the industry, and they're all helping each other to get advice or post job opportunities, or let's say like this new book that you should check out. It's great for that. So how do you get out there? Game jams is the perfect one. This counts as experience on your CV. I didn't know this before, but it is quite helpful. And you can use Discord to find people to join the game jam with you and create your own little team. It's great. Reach out to your idols. Like Tim Schafer from Double Fine Adventure, you could hit them up on Twitter and LinkedIn. But if that's someone that inspires you, then hell yes. The least that they can do is ignore your message. But just be transparent when you're messaging these people, because obviously they have a very busy schedule. And 60% of the time they do reply. Just say, hey, do you want to have a virtual coffee with me? I'm a student. I want to learn more about the industry, and I was hoping you could give me some advice and guidance. So it does work. But yeah, definitely try that. Meetups, events hosted by my local game developers or conferences. I did one which was the NI Games event, which they held at a local bar up in Belfast. And I got to meet Brenda Romero and, got to talk to them. They had Italic Pig there who were showcasing their newest game called Paleo Pines. There was people from Ulster University wanting to talk about their latest course on games development. Like, these things happen all the time, and you just need to look a little and find them. And it's a great way to meet new people and actually talk to people within the industry already. John Romero was even there and talked a bit about Doom. So there's this new thing as well, mentors. Finding a mentor to help you. Let's say you want to get better at 3D modeling, or you're trying to get into publishing. You can find a mentor either through Discord or LinkedIn. Or there's this new thing, Limit Break, which is opening up applications on the 11th of April. So you can find yourself a mentor that will help you on your journey into the gaming industry. So Is there any questions? Also, there's my socials. I'm open for networking if you guys want to message me.
Thanks, Debbie. We have someone asking to share the Discord group links.
Oh yeah, I will put them in the chat.
Yeah, that would be great. And let me just check. We're actually streaming on YouTube as well. So just want to make sure. Okay. Guys, if you've got any questions, please put it into the chat. This is your time to find out more. Networking isn't often talked about, but it is actually a really important factor, especially in the games industry. I'm sure you agree, Demi.
Oh yeah, like I never thought I would get the chance to talk here if it wasn't through someone telling me about this, or be a mentor for another games academy. Like, didn't think these opportunities were available, but through networking, you can find like so much.
Yeah, there's so many opportunities here, just not just doing your job, but to actually reach out. It's amazing. So there's no other questions. I don't know, is there anything else you want to tell the students? We've got quite a bit of time left.
Oh, I didn't think I would be so fast. I thought I would be talking for ages, but
it does always feel like it goes so fast.
Yeah, honestly. Okay, one of the other things, like, let's say my experience, I didn't think network was that big of a thing. So when I got into my games course, like I thought LinkedIn was such a professional thing. I thought it was too adult for me. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do, even though I was doing games design. I had an idea to do concept art, and then I changed my field completely into project management and producing because I thought it was cutthroat trying to get into the art industry. But it's so silly. It was, I got accepted for a job for a small company that was just moving over to Northern Ireland. And when I got the contract, I was a bit, I don't know if this is right for me. So I asked advice in the NI Game Dev Network. It's like, could somebody take a look at this contract for me and let me know if I'm being undersold here or if this is an actual good opportunity? And like loads of people gave me advice, like so much. Like I didn't think people would do that for me. And it was just lovely. I got put in, I got to meet Leila Collins, who's like essentially like my mentor in this and all. And she gave me an opportunity to actually mentor on a Saturday. And it was £250, and I just had to talk about myself and help with their game jam. And it's just like, just through trying to get advice for a contract, like how crazy that can go on. And there's just so many other wee things. Like I got to meet people from Hypixel. I got to meet people from Italic Pigs. I got to meet the publisher for Stardew Valley because they were all talking in the Games Academy. And I've become friends with a lot of them. So everybody helps each other out. There's even a small group where we share like any of these books that would be great for if you're learning about the industry or you want to get better at certain thing in your field. And we also have like, we're constantly sending back each other like job postings, like stuff like that. That's just through making friends and making friends in your own class as well. Like I didn't think I would like want to talk to many people, but when your lecturer tells you is like, you know, remember that these people are going to be in the industry as well, and maybe it's good to actually be friends with a lot of them because you might need them in the future if you join a studio. It's true. It does help a lot. I've gotten a couple of people that I used to go to college with, and some of them have moved on into the industry and some are still struggling. So I help them out with like telling them, oh yeah, here's a new webinar that you should try out, or there's this event that you should go to. This new website is hosting something that you might find nice. Stuff like that. It's something so simple.
No, that's brilliant. We've actually got 2 questions that's come along as you were talking. Have you got the chat open? I'm happy to read them out actually for everyone.
Oh, I got the chat open. What technological assets and software tools that you used and or recommend to use in the game dev project? Do you mean like project management tools? Because I did use Unreal Engine and Unity, if that's what you're talking about, or Maya and ZBrush, Substance Painter. In terms of project management, I would use Jira or Trello. Trello is my favorite. So they're really good for this sort of thing Canva is great if you want to make presentations. Miro is great for if you want to make a massive mood board or trying to show your process like through UI wireframes. Can be daunting. It's just starting out for students. Can you give any advice on how to take the jump into participating? It is daunting, but honestly, if you're in these discords and you just need, like, let's say you just need one programmer and you're shy, you have a bit of anxiety, like, just remember, like, most gamers are all the same. We all have a bit scared of the outside world. So they're as scared as you are. But once you guys like get talking and meeting with each other, then it's so much easier. And then you end up joking. Like when the Games Academy and I had their thing, most of these students didn't even know each other. They were all coming from different schools, but they're all like chatting away with each other. It's, you know, that there's a task to be done. But definitely join game jams. It looks so good on your CV, and it's a chance for networking. It's a chance to like get your name in the industry. Like, this is the best game that we made for this year or something. Like, that's great for your portfolio. Do you have any recommendations for us in terms of project management tools? Yes, I would say definitely Trello. Trello is so easy to use. You can put cards. It's great for the Agile and Scrum method. It's just, you can put daily sprints, daily Scrum meetings. Everything is put in there, and you can add other people to the meeting and they can comment, they can add attachments. There's timers, like you can label all your cards. I've used it in every one of my projects, even in college. So I hope
Yeah. Some really useful information and really good questions as well. It is, I mean, you've touched a lot on game jams. It obviously is very important. And just to let you guys know, especially those who are part of the student membership, we do have game jams twice a year. So we did a collab jam with actually Swedish students. So, I mean, when those opportunities come in our newsletter, jump in, you know, it's a whole thing, as Demi said, don't be shy, you just got to do it. And the social aspect of making your own team as well, it's fantastic. Oh, we have another one. There we go. Can you give insights on what employers look for when hiring and what we can do to improve our chances of being hired, please, especially being new to the industry?
So whenever you're looking up a job and they're saying what they want from that person, like we want somebody that's charismatic, we want somebody that knows the industry, stuff like that. That's all buzzwords that you should be using in your introduction on your CV. Like, really, in terms of what it is they're looking for, yes, there is some people that are really trying to get into the industry, so definitely apply for junior roles and stuff like that. Try and stay away from the hard ones that are senior and all, because they may not go for you. But essentially what they're looking for is somebody that is nice, you know, be your most authentic self whenever you do get the interview. Don't try and be anybody you're not. Like, this is somebody that wants to be, like, will potentially be working with you. So being you is the best way to be, because then they're gonna, yeah, that person's cool, I definitely want to work with them, they're so funny. But that could work for you. But definitely check out buzzwords, especially if you're doing your LinkedIn. Get all those certificates. Like, if you've done that course before, then, you know, just have it on the background, no one will know. You'll get certified. But it's something like that. Seeing all these certified things actually makes it so much more appealing to employers. You can't really show your soft skills through your LinkedIn, but you can show your hard skills. So definitely recommend that. And how much did you spend? Oh, I spent like loads of time. Like, I'm one of those people that, like, if get obsessed with a project, like if I have like 3 essays to do, I'll like spend all hours finishing them, doing nothing else but the essay. I'll stay away from new games because I'll just get obsessed with them. So the best way, honestly, I guess, what my partner does, he has an app on his phone which will teach you programming, and it gives you tasks and certain things. So that's something you can do in your free time to develop your skills. But what I've been using is LinkedIn Learning, and that's been the best thing for me. If you are going to do stuff like this, I highly recommend you make your own website. Let's say like WordPress or Wix, because whenever you're documenting your journey, that information stays within your head better. And if you have like your own website, you can just like link your potential employer and be like, see, I know what I'm talking about. This is all the software I've done. These are previous projects I've done, personal projects. I'm extremely passionate about the gaming industry, and I've also reviewed these games. Like, all they want to see is if you're passionate about this industry. That is the main thing they want to see. They don't want to hire somebody that's like, it's a part-time thing. I'm not really into games. They want somebody that is as passionate as they are. So make a website.
You've actually touched on, maybe something not to do. Is there any other kind of advice on try not do this kind of thing?
Try not to do? I guess try, like, I don't know. I guess it's like you have to get out there. If you're somebody that's like spending most of their time gaming or is not really focusing in class, then you're not going to get there. You have to be passionate. Like, you definitely have to be passionate. The best thing I would give is like, I don't know, there's not really something I could think of for not do. It's like, do everything I've said. Definitely do that. Don't avoid it.
Be active and proactive.
Yeah, be active in this industry.
There's actually another question here for you, and is it advisable to add non-game related job experiences on your CV, or is it better to keep it game focused only?
It depends. I did have something on my CV that was like from Home Bargains, and because I was applying for a leadership role and I was a team leader then, it's only if it's relevant. Like, don't be adding like all this history of I used to work at McDonald's and Sainsbury's and all that stuff. Maybe add one, because that is a good way to showcase your soft skills and hard skills and see if you're a team player. But definitely try and keep it more game focused. Only have like one previous experience there. And game jams count as experience. I did not know this, and now I know this. So definitely use that.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very, very much. Maybe give it a few more seconds. Any last questions for Demi, guys? Going once, going twice? Okay, fantastic. Demi, thank you so much for joining us. I think that was a great start. Yeah, and hopefully see you at a future conference.
Yeah, hopefully see you too. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, Demi. Bye. We've got about 10 minutes until our next talk, haven't we, Kirsty? So why don't we maybe talk a little bit about the schedule for today for everybody watching?
I was thinking the exact same thing. Yeah. So guys, the schedule has changed recently. So just in case there are people that's not aware of it, we've had some new speakers, some speakers that aren't able to join us. I think Wes being on the same day has complicated things. But yeah, should we just share it? Have you got it on your screen?
I can get it up now. So let me just share my screen. But it'd be great to know a little bit about all of you as well, because obviously we can't see you, you can see us. Are you, what universities are you at? What are you studying? What are you hoping to get out of, I guess, today's student conference? What are you hoping to learn? Are there any speakers that you're excited about seeing today? Just pop your answers in the chat. We can kind of try and get to know you a little bit as well. Okay, let's see if I can just share the schedule quickly. Cool. So you can all see that, I hope.
Yeah.
Cool. So we've just had Demi Mark, who's chatted a little bit about networking. Today we're going to be finishing at 2 p.m. So short and sweet today. Hopefully that should make you all excited for Friday. So next up at 11, so we've got 10 minutes, we've got Jay, who's a game development and publishing consultant at Newzoo. He's going to talk a little bit about off games and the metaverse.
And apologies, I just saw publishing is sorry.
Little spelling mistake there, don't worry about that.
Not publishing.
yeah, and then we've got Kostas Zarifis, who's a game director at Roxanne, talking about kind of the behind the scenes of the design interview and test. So hopefully that should be really interesting for you. Then we've got a little bit of a break. After that, we'll come back with our very own Dom Shaw, who's the EDI coordinator at Ukie. Dom does some amazing work in the industry and really kind of brings together the efforts of equality, diversity, and inclusion. He has an amazing program that he's running called Raise the Game. And he's going to chat a little bit about how EDI can empower students on their journey into games. So hopefully that should be really relevant for all of you. And really interesting as well. You know, this is something that's really important, especially like something we try to practice at Ukie. Dom's amazing. So yeah, hopefully you should all look forward to that. And then our last speaker today, we have Jason, who's the director and co-founder of Arrogant Pixel. I believe Jay is also one of the ensemble, how do you say, people. Ensemble is London Games Festival kind of, how would you explain it, Kirsty? I feel like I'm not explaining it very well. They're kind of showcasing these amazing people that work in the industry. And Jay's going to talk about the power of the student voice. So hopefully that should be really empowering to all of you.
Just further on that, so Ensemble, it's part of the EDI initiative, and it's basically like showcasing, every year it's a different amount of people, I think about 10 people in the industry. And I mean, it's lovely actually what they do. So at London Games Festival, which obviously is currently going with, this is a part of the event of, and they have these lovely banners with pictures of them and just, a bit of information about them. It's just part of the EDI, just inclusiveness and saying this is such a diverse industry. And I think it's a beautiful thing to do. I think they've been doing it for about 5 years now. And I'm pretty sure this will go on. But yeah, if you are around in London, definitely go visit London Games Festival. They've got their website to show what's on. They've got a lot of virtual things as well. So definitely I'll put the link in the chat for you guys and have a look at that.
Yeah, that's much better explained than me. Thanks, Kirsty. Yeah, no, I mean, there's so much exciting stuff going on in the London Games Festival, so you should definitely check that out. And I think, what's the last, is it this Friday that's the last day of the Games Festival, Kirsty, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, it started last Friday, so yeah.
Yeah, so you do have a couple of days to check out all the events. Yeah, I've just seen a question in the chat about whether the recordings will be available to watch. We're going to put them on YouTube, so you should be able to watch this back.
And also for student members, what we'll do is we'll put in the next newsletter the links to them. So that's the access for you.
Yeah.
Okay, I am going to drop Jay a little message. Hopefully he'll be joining us soon. Guys, just also to reiterate, like, questions are so important. This is the time for you guys to just use this resource. These guys, as mentioned earlier, the industry is so good with helping each other out. I mean, when we do these conferences and calling up for mentors for game jams, it's unbelievable how people put themselves forward for these things. It's good for them as well, but it's because they care, and we're always looking to grow the industry and help new generations coming in. So it's up to you though. As Demi said, you've got to be like proactive and try get that information and do all that you can. One of those is building that relationship with people in the industry, and one way you can do it is just reaching out to them. Also, when they do have at the end of their presentation where they've got their Twitter link or whatnot, don't be shy in reaching out to them. Just drop them a message if you want. That's why they put it there.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And I think just for myself, so I work at with Digital Schoolhouse, which is one of Ukie's education initiatives. We've had kind of esports events for students, secondary school students, and we've had some of our events recently we had one of our semi-finals at Stafford University, so the Digital Institute in London, which is at Here East. And I think it's really interesting because some of the students working with us on the production side, you know, we can really tell kind of when someone's really passionate and kind of reaches out, and even just asking those really basic questions and just asking, actually, I'm really interested in what you guys do. And that just shows kind of just like going that extra mile, just putting yourself out there, even if you don't feel like you know enough to ask questions, even just asking those basic questions really kind of puts you apart from the crowd sometimes. And it's really worth even just reaching out. Sometimes that's just the best way. You don't have to know a huge amount. But yeah, I guess that would just be my advice if you're kind of unsure about where to start, unsure about how to get into the industry. But yeah, so we've got Friday tomorrow. We also have some amazing speakers. So we're going to kick off at 9:50, and then our first speaker, Clemens, who's a senior programmer at Endreams, is going to kick off their talk about Unreal coding, things you learn the hard way, followed by Michael Killick, who's a games lecturer and course lead at Rising Games. He's going to talk about getting into games design and education. That's really interesting. Then we've got Deborah Farley, head of talent and outreach at UK Games Talent and Finance, who's going to chat about your first steps to running your own indie studio. Then we've got Naveen Yadav, who's a QA manager at Endreams, day in the life of a QA. Okay, and our penultimate speaker tomorrow is Paul Franks, who's interactive entertainment lead at Coots. Get a real job. That sounds interesting. Yeah. And then we've got the amazing Kim Parker Adcock, who's managing director at OPM Jobs. How not to get a job in the games industry. So again, just a real mix of speakers tomorrow and today. I think we'll have some really interesting talks, and just remember, all these speakers, they're here for a reason. You know, they really want to help, so don't be shy, ask the questions, get anything in, and I'm sure that you can reach out to them on LinkedIn or Twitter afterwards, and they'll be happy to help. But yeah, no, we're really excited, and just keep being active in the chat, keep letting us know if there's anything you want us to answer. Just use that tool. If you're watching on YouTube as well, you should be able to put any questions in the chat there, so we'll keep an eye on that as well. So that's just a note for anybody watching on YouTube.
Yeah.
There we go.
If you've got any questions about the student membership, like if your university is part of the student membership, and you've got any questions, do ask us. As well as, I've got to say, the last speaker, Kim, tomorrow, I'm quite excited. She is the managing director of the recruitment agency that deals a lot with the games industry. So maybe also keep in mind, keep her contact for when the time comes when you're looking for a job. And she is just brilliant when she tells you the stories. I'm not going to give any away, but the stories of what people have put in their CVs and whatnot. So that's going to be a really interesting one. I always have a few giggles during hers. Oh, there's a lot of hellos. So we got Norwich University of Arts, we got Brunel, we got Abbotsford. That is fantastic. That's all around the country. We actually went to Abbotsford for a student conference that we held there. So hopefully we are planning later this year. University of Chichester. There we go.
Hey, amazing. And just a note, some of you may have seen another person joining this call called Sean. Sean, for those that don't know, is our new education program coordinator, which is a brand new role at Ukie. She's actually going to be taking over the student membership program. So you'll all be introduced to her when we send our next newsletter. She's amazing. And obviously Kirsty and I have been doing our best to kind of run these events and kind of keeping the student membership going when we sadly lost Leon. He didn't die, but he's moved on.
Don't worry,
yeah.
he's alive.
Yeah, Leon's doing obviously amazing. But yeah, we miss him loads, but we're so happy that Sian's joined us. She's she's really amazing. So I think you can all be excited for that. And then hopefully, you know, looking forwards and with the COVID situation much improved, there will be a lot more physical events coming up. So that should be really exciting. I know everybody's a little bit sick of sitting in front of a screen. So yeah, so that's coming up. And yeah, see Sian's in the chat there. Hello, Sian.
Just to give you an update, Jay is struggling to join us, but he is trying to. That's the main thing.
That's reassuring.
Yeah. One of the biggest stresses during a conference, if the speakers are going to join or not. But luckily we've got a good crowd, and we've got a good good record of people joining.
So thanks for your patience, everybody. We're just getting our next speaker in shortly.
Also, just to give a few more little bits of information. So with the conference, we are going to look, now that the pandemic has kind of settled down, not quite with cases, but you know what I mean. So we are going to look into the next student conference being on site. We normally do it at Aberdeen and Staffordshire, but that's all TBC. So just keep a lookout on the newsletters, because that's where we'll let you know, and also we'll bother your lecturers just to give you a nudge. We always find that it's also quite nice in person, just because you can actually physically face-to-face approach the speaker, which always makes it a lot more interactive. But that's something to look forward to. So yeah, keep an eye on those newsletters, guys.
And that goes for the game jam as well, doesn't it, Kirsty?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Which is like amazing, because it just means you get to collaborate with people in person. I think, you know, it's a lot more valuable when you can meet like-minded people in person and kind of share ideas and work together physically rather than over a screen. So so the game jam will also be going ahead. So that's exciting.
Yeah. And I think even, you know, there's different, you know, you need someone audio, studying audio and production and whatnot. But like the nice thing is, yes, you can, you know, create a team with friends. But remember, it's always nice to kind of meet new people. So if that's a way to do it, you know, do it. It's good. Like, as again with the networking, the more people you know, that's great, because that person you might meet later on 10 years down the line and might be able to help you in some way, or you help them. Christopher, so you did the game jam for 2021. How did you do?
Game jam for 2021. What was the theme again, Kirsty?
Was that the Mobo? I think they very good experience.
Oh yeah. There were two game jams. There's one in, I want to say,
duality theme.
And then there was one duality. Oh, right. Yeah. Hi, Jay.
Jay! Welcome! Thanks, Christopher, for sharing that with us. I think we are 4 minutes over, so I think absolutely, definitely give the spotlight to Jay. Thanks for joining us, Jay. Really appreciate it. Sorry for a bit of a hassle getting onto Zoom, but we'll immediately pass to you. You're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now? Is that all good?
Yes, perfect.
Cool. Let me share the screen, and hopefully it should work. Can you see my screen?
Perfect.
Amazing. Okay, let's get started then. So yeah, apologies for the delay, everyone. A little bit of Zoom technical difficulties on my side there. But yeah, I'm Jay. I'm a game development and publishing consultant at Newzoo. We're a games market research and insights firm. I think this talk will probably be a little different compared to the other more career-oriented ones that you guys will have today. But yeah, I'm kind of hoping to take you over some numbers and data aspect of the games industry, and then quick overview of the metaverse, what it is, what the potential there is, and hopefully we can get through that in the time that's still there. So I'll sort of jump straight in. Quick word on Newzoo. So what we do is we host various different services. As you can see here, there's our platform, which has kind of a standardized metrics for all the games industry, looking at kind of off-the-shelf solutions and reports for the industry, what's happening, how people can kind of invest, where they can look at, and how they can assess game performance, especially on PC and console. We have a market research segment where we sort of look to deep dive into player personas and really help developers and publishers understand who their audiences are and how they can kind of prospectively launch games and all of that good stuff. And then finally, consulting kind of marries everything into bespoke kind of analysis and more kind of edge cases for new games, new sort of design elements that are coming out in the industry, and how they may work with kind of existing platforms. So a lot of the metaverse stuff actually comes to that. But jumping straight into the industry itself. So yeah, last year the games industry actually hit just over 180 billion USD in revenues, which is pretty crazy to think about, and it's only projected to kind of continue growing from there, adding about another 40 billion or so in the next 3 years. So it's a very exciting space to be in, and it's growing kind of exponentially, really, especially since the beginning of COVID. Just for context there, the games industry last year was bigger than both film and music combined, and it's the youngest out of the three. So you can really see kind of the impact that games is having on the world and on so many people. Looking at kind of that figure by a platform split, a lot of that revenue is coming from mobile, which I know isn't the most traditionally accepted or liked games platform, but it is one of the big things that's driving growth, investment, and interest into the industry. And it is one that's, I think, starting to show that it can be a games platform with a lot of new games coming, especially with core games, as the technology also evolves to a point where you can have a bit more in terms of competitive play and going away from just the casual aspect that mobile has kind of been typecast into a little bit. But yeah, as you can see, mobile here still has more or generates more revenue than both console and PC combined. And if we're looking at that kind of from the perspective of the world generally, half of these revenues are actually coming from the Asia Pacific region. So, China, everyone's kind of talking about how it's such a big games market, but it is a massive games market. It's the biggest in the world with 46 billion in revenues last year, followed obviously by the US, which accounts for roughly 20% of this global sales volume. That does show that whenever we're kind of building games or looking to build games, you do need to have an international audience in mind, because your key audience that's going to drive the success of your game, or will even necessarily play your game, isn't always going to be the one regionally closest to you. So, for instance, in my last studio, Halo Studios, our game was Terratech, and our core audience was actually spread across the US and Japan, which are two completely separate localities. But then also we had to be able to kind of market to both those regions, as they were really the ones driving our sales and performance. Whereas, the UK where we're based, and even Europe, wasn't really as big a market. I mean, I wouldn't say it was bad, but nothing on the scale of what we saw in the US or Japan. So I think it's important to understand just how global games is and how you need to address that in whatever you're looking to build or create, really. And looking at sort of the people behind games. So last year, I think it was estimated, this is slightly scaled up a bit, but we hit almost 3 billion global gamers worldwide. The definition of gamers can be contentious there, but at least 3 billion, or over a third of the world's population, essentially in some way interacted with or played some form of games. And I mean, that's really cool. That's absolutely amazing, right? That so many people are engaging with this space. I was very excited that I'd finally be on the cool kids table now that games are becoming so big. But then, you had all the underground celebrity gamers like Henry Cavill came out, and there goes my chances of being a cool kid. So gets relegated to the gaming industry side, which is just as fun. But yeah, looking at these numbers, it's crazy to see just how big games has become. And again, just as revenues, we're seeing that a large chunk of these people are also from the Asia Pacific region. I think what's most interesting here is that you can see that the US, the North America region, actually has the smallest population out of these. But as you saw, it had one of the highest spends. So that's actually a super valuable region by player spend, because US gamers on average spend more than almost all worldwide. I think Japanese beat them. But yeah, that just goes to show how accessible your games need to be to these regions just to have that kind of wide-spanning, boat-spanning kind of reach and hopefully success. Another cool statistic before you get too bored of them, but half of the gamers in the world are actually women. And of course, this isn't split equally across platform. I think mobile does add the lion's share here, but it is very cool to see that games which previously been very heavily sort of typecast is kind of changing and being more accessible to sort of different people, different genders. And that trend going forward, I think, is one that's going to continue to equalize. And that's a really cool thing, especially in this industry. And of course, the big one for why we're seeing a lot of change happen right now in the industry is, well, COVID. As people was trapped indoors over the last few years, you had a lot more interest in the game space. We had, almost 36 billion in revenues in 2 years, which is nuts, and over 300 million new players. And this is a trend that isn't really going away. I think it's something that's highlighted the importance of games and, of games evolving, especially into social platforms. And that's really what's kind of pushed a lot of the metaverse trend that we're going to be sort of deep diving into just in a couple of slides time. But yeah, it's crazy to think how far we've come just in these 2 years where everyone's kind of been trapped indoors, and how gaming has been this sort of all-encompassing social / entertainment device that pretty much a vast majority of the world have had to get accustomed to and use in the last few years. And they're definitely sticking around. So going on to sort of the more social side of things, we actually conducted a study last year looking at people's interest in games as social spaces, and this is actually some of the results that we got there. And this is not even looking at just gamers specifically, we're looking at everyone who's essentially online. About half of those people already said that they used, in COVID times at least, game worlds as a medium to socialize with friends, and have kind of continued to do so, with 80% actually expecting to use game worlds and virtual world, I guess, as a social setting to socialize with friends, both at home and abroad. And that's really what I think has driven the element of the metaverse and the hype around it in the last year, and had a lot of sort of conversations because there's such a big kind of potential for this space beyond just games alone. But when we're thinking about the metaverse, what is the metaverse? What do we actually mean when we talk about the metaverse specifically? So there isn't really a specific all-encompassing definition for what the metaverse is. But and then you can see here, I mean, everyone has a slightly different idea of what it is, with a couple of key attributes there on the side. But I think for us, and to me specifically, it's this idea of a virtual, not necessarily even a game world, but just a virtual / digital world that can be infinitely scalable and has some sort of digital persistence, and can in some way enable social human experiences that can't be achieved solely in the physical world. It's not necessarily a replacement for it, but more something that can work in tandem with it, and sort of open the gates to kind of new ideas and new ways of being creative and engaging in almost this digital life that we already sort of partake in, being glued to computer screens and phones, and being gamers, being online or playing on the PC for a lot of the time anyways. So it's just more of an expansion of that in a way that's a lot more social, and kind of encompasses almost a social media aspect, but related to kind of a more immersive and scalable solution. And what's sort of gotten us here? Well, I mean, still remember the days where a game used to just be a game, where you could just go and buy yourself a primary copy, and then slowly to kind of increase the lifetime of a game, especially as the development costs went up and the time for development went up, as we needed to bring higher fidelity experiences. Added things like services, so like the free-to-play elements, the DLCs, all this additional content, adding kind of this multiplayer aspect to keep players coming back. You saw kind of emergence of esports and things like that. And then, the community element that really came around, games with, Discord and streamers on Twitch and things, building their entire communities where people who interact with games now are sometimes even just casual watchers of these things and don't even necessarily actually play the games that they watch. And seeing how these games have then gone on to expand past that, even into sort of global franchises. We saw, League of Legends dabble with Arcane. You have, Sonic's second film out in cinema right now. So just seeing how games as a platform and service is expanding past its initial core serving of being just a game, which is kind of leading to this platform element now as well, with likes of Minecraft and Roblox really promoting user-generated content, and allowing you to really build out your own idea for what kind of world you want in those spaces, or what kind of things you want to create, and giving that to the players essentially. Kind of following on that from that, but looking at the key trends that we've seen facilitate a lot of those previous trends I spoke about, but then also what's feeding into this metaverse loop, especially in the last year. As obviously you've mentioned, the games as a social space where people are interacting with them as a replacement for often kind of real world kind of meetings, especially when we were locked in. And then, on the back of that, the streaming phenomenon that's exploded in the last few years, especially with a lot more content creators inspiring kind of communities around them and becoming essentially celebrities in their own right. And, traditional celebrities moving to things like streaming, with people like deadmau now primarily just streaming on Twitch. We're seeing kind of a lot of different elements on the community side there, with influencers and streamers coming up, and how they're impacting both the longevity and discoverability of games in general, but then also beyond that, how they're kind of creating a separate brand for themselves in this space. User-generated content is again another big element, as kind of discussed. But yeah, that's one of the big things I think that's been fueling these early proto-metaverses of, Minecraft or Roblox, where people are able to create their own world and have some sort of links to them, and in some ways monetize them, right? Like Roblox allows you to have credits and things like that for players. And it's really kind of that first step, I think, that inspired a lot of the sort of investment into the space in recent years. But yeah, that, and then obviously we're getting a lot more in terms of hardware bandwidth, being able to have more high fidelity experiences, especially with 5G coming into play. And we're looking especially kind of Eastern territories where it's been harder to achieve sort of this high scalability in having the hardware, just from a cost perspective, but with technology helping that barrier shrink, and allowing things like cloud gaming and subscription services to come about. You're really seeing kind of a big drive towards this platform agnosticism, where any device can then be used to give you a high fidelity gameplay experience. And I think that's one of the key elements that's getting us to think about the metaverse and what it could eventually be, because obviously this experience would need to be very high fidelity with like low latency and lag to actually be immersive in the way that it's supposed to be. And the world is just not there from a technological perspective yet, but we can sort of see with 5G and the potential of that, and where we're going with hardware, that is something that's slowly becoming more of a possibility. And the final aspect, of course, Web3, again, kind of contentious in what it will entail, with blockchain NFTs not being anyone's favorite word in the industry. But it is a new concept and a new sort of form of digital ownership that provides interesting, let's say, kind of ideas. I don't think anything has quite come to fruition yet there, but it has definitely inspired a lot of investment and talk in the space, which is what drove such a crazy trend in the space last year, and has drove a lot of investment in the space in last year. And that's double-edged sword in that you have the slightly less fun aspects of it, where games in this space aren't necessarily what we'd want them to be, but at the same time you are seeing a lot more sort of driving money come into the space, which is still letting it expand and still letting it grow. And hopefully that will sort of normalize as we figure out what we want to achieve with this technology in the space. But yeah, that's not to say that the metaverse is going to be kind of for games alone. I think we've talked about how it's becoming this social element, and we've seen how both virtual events and collaborations from brands have impacted it, especially in the last year. A lot of big concerts have been held in like Fortnite with, Ariana Grande, for instance, and you're having, big fashion brands like Gucci coming to Roblox as partners. And as you can see here, London Fashion was also through their party last year in Roblox as well, bringing in celebrities and all of that into the space. That just goes to show how far encompassing the potential for this space is and how people are ready to be on board with it. One is obviously, we had kind of limited options in the last few years, but the fact that these events have succeeded and that brands are actively looking to communicate in that space just shows the potential for it beyond just the games element and the potential for the metaverse as a more all-encompassing sort of societal phenomenon, really. So looking quickly now into some of the key things that we think will be of key interest this year and beyond, really. As mentioned, the blockchain gaming element is something that isn't necessarily going to disappear immediately, as much as some people, I think, wish it would. I do think the technology has some uses. We haven't necessarily seen sort of the right way of it being implemented yet, but I think you are seeing kind of rebrand there from play to earn to play and earn, and just focus on actually building the game first before the economy layer. And I think this will slowly start to become a bit more normalized as these spaces grow, and especially as the element of the metaverse involved with them grows, especially because you need this idea of digital ownership in something like the metaverse for it to even have value in the first place. We're also seeing a lot more investment, obviously, with last year metaverse was such a big buzzword. There's a lot of M&A and a lot of investors looking at what is the metaverse, what is games. And so, I mean, that's just great in terms of the potential for getting money into the space and getting funding for a lot of upcoming both developers in the game space, but then also looking at this more interactive space and looking at games as a social experience specifically. And I think that's only going to continue this year as the tech behind it also grows in prominence. We are also seeing NFTs kind of go, not necessarily in the game space, but on a separate level, go towards this almost like luxury and lifestyle brand with things like Bored Ape having that club and things like that, which is kind of contentious, I'd say, but at the same time, it's almost like an art piece, right? Like you give value to art, and this is a digital token which has a similar value. And in some ways with Bored Ape, you have kind of the real world element coming in, and we're seeing a lot of that cross between the real world and digital and how that can interact in this space. And I think that's going to be something that grows in prominence, especially as we come out of COVID and look at what the space can become. And on the back of that, we're seeing sort of fashion brands coming into games, as mentioned before, using it as a social setting, but then also using games to promote to people that they can't necessarily reach through kind of more traditional means in fashion. You're seeing new brands like 100 Thieves come in with little merch drops and things like that. So we're seeing a lot more kind of potential for these brands and external players to come into games and metaverse related spaces and be involved at kind of the base level and help kind of build this up. And finally, this kind of fear of missing out on metaverse elements is driving a lot of brands and more traditional companies to buy this virtual digital real estate. Like, for instance, JP Morgan bought a space in Decentraland and made it into a digital office. I don't know if anyone really wanted a Decentraland JP Morgan office, but it's there. And if they want to throw money into it, then they have the money to throw at it. But yeah, that's some of the key things that I think we're going to see continue to grow and fuel a lot of the investment and talk in the space, and hopefully expand the opportunities there and in how they can relate to games and beyond. But yeah, all of that's to say, really, we're kind of just at the start line here. The metaverse is far from being defined. We're nowhere near kind of the Ready Player One state of it. but it is a space that's seeing a lot of interest, especially both from games and outside. And when looking at things like user-generated content in this space and how games can kind of fuel that, I think there's a lot of potential and like scope for building this space and then also getting funding in this space. So it is one that I think we'll definitely have to see how it goes in the upcoming years, because we're not there yet, but it has been kind of an important first few steps in these last year or two in terms of defining what we hope this place will become and what it can achieve. So yeah, that was kind of the brief introduction to games in the metaverse for me. I know it was a lot of information to kind of take away, so I hope it was at least useful and you guys learned something new there and can hopefully look into the space by yourselves. But yeah, if you had any questions on anything I spoke, feel free to reach out to me. And we also have a free report on the metaverse as well as on other things in the games industry. So feel free to look that up if you do want to know about kind of the latest trends and things happening in the space.
Thank you, Jay. That was really interesting and such an incredibly interesting topic and a growing industry. And thank you for providing your details there. I've got your LinkedIn, which is great. So if anybody wants to kind of reach Jay after this, then you know where to find him. Have we got any questions for Jay? Now's your time. Anything metaverse related? Just going to check our YouTube channel as well, because it's got the stream running there as well. But yeah, I guess just waiting for those questions, Jay. Is there any advice that you would give to students maybe looking to break into this corner of the industry or looking to explore kind of opportunities? Are there any opportunities that you think are out there that they should go for? Any advice?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, honestly, with games and especially with this space, the biggest thing I'd say is go to events. That's always kind of been the big one. I know networking is definitely one of the harder things to do, but especially right now, we have kind of a lot of opportunities with things opening up. I know, London Games Festival, obviously, and WSD going on. So going to events and speaking to people in the industry, being engaged with that, and just reaching out. If you see someone interesting, whether it's on LinkedIn or just generally just reach out and be like, this seems like a cool project that you're working on. I'd like to be involved. And, games is a super collaborative space. So people are very, very nice about that. And I think, if you show that initiative, show that you're passionate about it, people want to help you in this space. So definitely just reach out, go to events and like interact with the community more than anything else.
Thanks, Jay. We do have a question actually in the chat. So this is from Megan. Megan asks, you mentioned how the fashion industry is branching into games and the metaverse and the statistics of different genders taking part in gaming. How do you think the future of online gaming and the metaverse will impact people's ideas of identity in the future? Very interesting question.
That's a good one. I mean, I think we've seen this kind of element where already people, we've seen Fortnite and all these other games that have come about, Minecraft, all of this, where you're building your own digital persona in a game anyways. So you have your avatar, and that in some way has a value to you inherently. And I think that level will just continue to grow as you have new players in the space. I think brands are capitalizing on that in terms of seeing that people find their avatars and their digital identity important to them. And they're just essentially pushing on that element to bring themselves into the space and add another element of, I guess, fashion to it and have this layer in terms of being able to show off your identity digitally online. And I think that component of your life will definitely continue to grow more and more important. We've already seen that, from the introduction of just mobile phones to, games becoming more platforms and people being attached to these kind of digital worlds and their digital identity there. I think that's just going to continue to grow as almost a second life in a way, your virtual digital version of it.
Good answer to a good question. Anybody else have a question for Jay before we wrap up? Doesn't look like it. Fantastic. Well, listen, thank you so much, Jay. That was an incredibly interesting talk. And everybody else, you know where to find Jay if you have any questions. Yeah, I can see from the chat here that people found that very interesting. So thanks so much for coming on here and giving your talk. Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. It was a pleasure.
Hopefully see
Thanks,
you
Jay.
soon,
Take
Jay.
care.
Bye.
Bye.
That was a good one. I think it was the first one that we've actually had on that topic.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting one indeed. I
Yeah.
still don't understand fully what the meta
No, I'm struggling to wrap my head around that
I'm
one.
getting there one day.
Yeah, probably half of these students watching will be
I see Christopher
in this
agrees.
industry. Yeah. Oh, well, that was great. And we've got our next speaker here already. Hello,
Who's just
Costas.
arrived? Hello, Costas.
You look like you're in a dungeon or something. Oh dear, we can't hear you.
We can't hear you, unfortunately.
Costas is going to talk about behind the scenes of the design interview and test. Hi, yes, we can hear you now.
Cool.
Welcome.
Yeah, it's not a dungeon. I'm at the tobacco dock for the WAS event, which I completely forgot was today. So
yes,
I really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah.
It must be quite difficult to do 2 events at once.
Thank you so much.
It's fine. It's fine. I had to move some meetings around, but it's fine. Cool.
Well, on that note, should we pass it on to you then, so you can go back to your the event?
Yeah,
let's
do that. We'll let you introduce yourself and your topic. So yeah, over to you.
Cool. Let me share my screen. Sorry, I'm not much of a Zoom user. We use Teams at our studio. Share screen. Here you go. Cool.
There you go.
You can see my screen presumably now. Awesome. Hi everyone. I'm here to talk about behind the scenes of the game dev interview and test. On the schedule, I think it was down as the design test, but it is going to be more general than that. So if we were doing this in an auditorium, I'd be asking how many designers and how many artists and how many coders we have, but I'm going to assume it's a mix. But yes, hopefully it will be relevant to everyone. I'm going to be talking about mainly how we do things here at Rogue Sun, but yeah, hopefully it will apply to any studio of any size to some extent. So let's take a look. Actually, my first slide is the tips in case our connection gets cut or you doze off or anything like that. I thought I'd get those in there right at the start. So here are my 5 tips for your application strategy. Do your research. Make sure you know who you're applying to, the size of the studio, obviously the portfolio, what projects they have done, they tend to do. Get all your assets in order in terms of CV, portfolio. Be prepared to engage with the process. You'll see it's over the next few slides, you'll see it's not trivial. It's not a trivial process. It does take some mental preparation and it takes time as well. Throughout the process, be honest, but not humble. Meaning humility is a great trait, obviously, but this is when you're applying to a job, you want to project confidence and you want to show, I guess, the best version of yourself. And freshen up your presentation skills, take an improv class. It is a performance to, in many ways. Obviously, like I said, you want to present a version of yourself that will be very appealing to your prospective employer. Right, who are we? Why should we care about anything I have to say? We are Rosen, founded by ex-landed veterans back in 2016. It's our studio is a very small studio, 15 developers, based in Guildford, but we're actually fully remote since the start of the pandemic. Likely to stay that way. I don't know. Taking it day at a time at the moment. Our most kind of public-facing project is a thing called Tin Hearts. It's a narrative puzzler, and is currently signed with Wire Productions, and it's due to be released later this year. There's a trailer and things. I don't want to take up time. I know we don't have loads of time, so I want to stick to the topic of the presentation, but feel free to check things out if you want more information on the studio. So moving on. So how we and others hire. Everyone's process is different, but like I said at the start, the learnings here are likely to help you succeed, regardless of where you're applying. I think in terms of the process and how it might be different, I think really the main differentiating factor is whether you're applying to a huge AAA, and there's different ways how people define that, but to me, anything over, I would say 50 people, maybe even less, is big. Or whether you're applying to an indie, smaller studio like ours. Usually, and how's that different? So usually, you'll find that the bigger studios tend to work with kind of the top of that list there, recruiters, recruitment agencies. And then the indie studios tend to kind of bootstrap and sort of utilize word of mouth more, or kind of the semi-free recruitment tools that are out there. We've actually engaged with all of those aspects of the spectrum. So yeah, like I say, we have fair experiences of the different avenues to attracting talent. But yeah, if you so really, it's sort of down to you. If you're looking to join a big AAA studio, which is where I started my career back at Lionhead, and is even though we're doing indie stuff now, it is a great way to sort of learn and build your skill set with a lot of support. Then you might want to engage with recruiters more. They tend to do a lot of the work for you in terms of putting your CV in front of hiring managers. If you're looking for the more kind of indie experience, where I guess you have more of an opportunity to kind of diversify and try different things and own different things, then you're probably better off applying direct. Whether it's through platforms like LinkedIn, or usually studios will have an inbox specific for applications. The other reason where you're better off applying direct is recruiters, as you may or may not know, take a chunk off the negotiated salary. So smaller studios are less likely to want to spend their smaller studios tend to have smaller budgets. So in many ways, you're doing them a favor, applying directly. So think about that, I guess, when you're applying. Right. So I'm going to talk a bit more detail with regards to our own process specifically. Yeah, it is a funnel. Well, we're basically kind of. It's very much designed, again, going back to kind of the differences between bigger and smaller studios. Smaller studios, like I said, tend to have less resources. So they tend to try and operate in a very agile, very efficient way, try to maximize the limited resources they have. And that applies to everything. And hiring is one of those things as well. Attracting talent to your team is probably one of the most important things that you'll be doing as kind of someone that has such a responsibility in the studio. So it's very important to get it right, but also, you know, when we have limited resources, it's important to find the right balance between spending the time and getting it right, like saying. So our process is very much designed to try and maximize kind of the efficiency with that balance. So you'll see it's a sort of 5-stage process, I guess. We do use, I mentioned LinkedIn earlier, we do predominantly use LinkedIn in terms of posting vacancies and receiving applications for those vacancies and evaluating those applications. So there's some, like I said, our process kind of has some automatic steps and some manual steps. I'll talk about those in a bit more detail in a second. Again, kind of designed for sort of maximization of efficiency. So LinkedIn is kind of the first gate there, or again, if you're applying directly, we'll go over your email, sort of cover letter and CV that way. So that's kind of where, you know, we first get exposed to your application. Then the second, really, so 1 and 2 is kind of one stage really. Then the next stage is the survey evaluation. I'll come back to that when we talk about it in more detail. Then there's a test, and then there's an interview. Once we close the live role, we then look at, I guess, the people who've made it past the last step and essentially are shortlisted, and then we make a decision. So yeah, stage 1, LinkedIn. LinkedIn, again, you know, for me, when I was applying, I had no idea about how these things work. Sort of, you know, you only obviously get exposed to the applicant's perspective, but you may or not know that there's some screening questions on LinkedIn. And so this is kind of actually the interface. I thought it might be useful to kind of see, you know, what a hiring manager actually sees. So you can see here there's a list of applicants. This is actually from the live role that we have open at the moment for a gameplay programmer. You know, at a glance, we can sort of get a feel for people's experience, people's background, which is great. And then, like I say, there's some screening questions. You'll see here, it says 191 applicants, and it's showing me 47 results. That's because it's only showing me the people who've made it past these screening question responses. We do tend to kind of go through the people who haven't made it past manually. So like I mentioned, it's kind of a combination of automation and sort of manual evaluation. But usually, and depending on the amount of applications, again, like I say, we only have a limited amount of time to fill roles. Obviously, we are very likely to be focusing on, you know, the people who've made it past this first, you know, part of the funnel. The manual kind of aspect of it, you know, like I said, so we assess the filtering effectiveness, because sometimes, you know, it's an algorithm and it might get it wrong. Because there's other attributes that kind of fit into this as well. Could be things like location and other such things. So sometimes we'll check just to see how LinkedIn sort of decided to present these results to us. Then there's usually a cover letter. Again, you know, we do the same thing with emails that come through, CV, portfolio. This is where you want to keep things visual. Even if you're a coder, I strongly suggest, you know, you have a portfolio website that someone can click a link, and, you know, they can jump on there quickly. And if you have GIFs, you know, video content, the usual lovely things, you know, because I don't know, there's probably stats out there. I know that people quote different, you know, amount of seconds that, you know, hiring managers tend to spend kind of looking at applications at this stage. So, you know, you want to do whatever you can to kind of have that edge, and that's going to make your CV stand out at this stage. So moving on. After this stage, what we do is we send people a questionnaire. You know, the people that we've shortlisted. So, you know, again, remember this funnel. So we started, let's say, with 191. That's already down to 47. Out of these 47, some smaller percentage is going to make it to this stage. This stage is, this questionnaire is quite interesting, and something that we introduced again recently, just because we're really struggling at our scale to, to kind of shortlist candidates. Again, like I was saying, a bigger studio might actually be, doing phone interviews with all of these, 47 people and things like that. We don't have capacity to do that. So what we do instead is we send people these questionnaires, and effectively what this is the exact same thing as the role description that we post, which is, usually people might think, oh, okay, this is kind of like a generic description of a gameplay programmer or an artist. In our case, it's not generic. We tend to put a lot of effort and sort of thinking behind the job description, because, we want to get the best sort of sense of the candidate, but also we want to give the best sense of what they would be doing on a daily basis. So then this questionnaire is basically, the bullet points that you see in the job description, but we break it down into a survey, and we ask people to give us more background and details on each and every one of these things and sort of rate themselves as well. And then this rating is interesting and important. Anyone who makes it to this stage will actually go through and read the responses in a lot of detail. But we also look at the rating, and we kind of get a sense of where people stand, sort of almost as a grade. And what we've seen is, we kind of focus on the people sort of landed the kind of 60 to 80 sort of percent of that kind of bell curve. People that go beyond that tend to not necessarily have a good understanding of their own abilities, I guess, sort of overestimate abilities. And then, people under that are likely to not have kind of the specific experience that we're after. So again, think about these things. I have heard that, other studios do similar things as well. Also, another thing with this, and the reason why, this kind of text responses to every question is we look at sort of communication style, writing style. There's a lot that you can learn from, how a person responds to such questions in the written skills. And these are things that are important regardless of, whether you're an artist, a designer, a coder, a producer. So again, this helps us kind of get a very early sense of candidates. Then there's a test. So you might have heard of the popular kind of Google and Amazon, Facebook kind of tests where, I guess, particularly for coders, you'll stand in front of a whiteboard and essentially have to kind of code on the spot without a compiler or IntelliSense or whatever. We don't do that, but our tests are kind of tricky in a different way in that they're pretty involved. So you'll see it says here kind of it might take 2 days full time, sort of 14 kind of hours, or a couple of weeks part time to go through our tests. What they usually are is kind of a half finished Unity or Unreal, depending on the project, where we go, here's basically 20% of a little thing, a feature, a mechanic. Again, speaking of coders or designers, with our tests, it will still have some kind of engine aspect to it, because even with artists, we want to make sure that that understanding of how you bring an asset from Maya, Blender, or whatever, into the engine, we want to make sure that that's there. And then we kind of go, here you go, finish this off, basically. And it tends to be very role specific. Again, we spend a lot of time kind of designing these things. Usually with our, you've seen that I've mentioned automation and kind of try to make things efficient for us when we do the evaluations, but we spend a lot of time kind of leading up to posting a job ad. So usually we'll actually do these things ourselves, and then sort of remove, you know, kind of 80% of that Unity project and go, you know, can we put it back? It's a simulation of the role as much as possible, like I say, and this includes communication. So we make it very clear to applicants that we want to hear from you while we do this. You know, keep sending questions to us, emails, you know, clarification. Sometimes we'll kind of omit information just to see if a candidate is going to go, oh, this is not clear, you know, can you give me a bit more clarity on this? So again, think about what I said at the start about kind of confidence and honesty, but, you know, don't sort of go, oh, I'm going to figure this out by myself. And we'll come back to this action in my last slide. So that's the test. I'm speeding things up a bit because I can see I'm starting to run out of time now. So you'll see now we're actually at the last stage, the interview, and it might feel counterintuitive because I think a lot of people kind of online resources focus on the interview, and it's very important, obviously part of the process. But what I want to show you is that actually the interview for us is the last step. And again, depending on the studio and the scale and the capacity of the studio for kind of hiring resources, you know, things might be different. But for us, the interview is a really, really expensive process for studios, because usually you're going to have at least 3 people. We usually have at least 3 people there. You know, usually senior people, and they're engaging with this process. It means they're not kind of working on tasks and things. And usually they have to do the more of these they have to do, the worse kind of for any ongoing project. So we want to make sure that when we're doing interviews, there's like 80% kind of possibility that it's going to lead to hire. Yeah, you'll see here, these are kind of, I think these specific tips you can find online quite easily. Eliminate take issues in advance. This applies more to our kind of current, I guess, situation where a lot of studios will be doing interviews over Zoom or Slack or something like that. You know, make sure that you're not doing the thing I did before this call, where I was signing up for Zoom because I didn't have a Zoom account, turns out. Be very familiar with your test submission, your portfolio, your CV. So this might sound obvious, but you know, we've had interviews where people kind of scrambling to find their different assets, and we've had interviews where, you know, people are going, oh yeah, let me show you this, and they're kind of smoothly sort of switching between sort of different things that they want to show off. The test submission applies to this. For us, that's another reason why we do this before the interview. If the interview takes an hour, we might be spending 40 minutes kind of drilling into the work the applicant did in the test. And it's brilliant because, you know, it gives everyone, you know, the applicant and ourselves kind of a sense of, you know, how we'll be working together on a day-to-day basis. Practice frequent interview questions. You know, different people have different opinions on this. I'm a big fan. It's something that I used to do when I was applying for roles. Just kind of be ready with my answers. You know, there's the classic, like, what do you want to be in 5 years things or whatever. You know, you might think, you know, that's kind of like a line from The Office or whatever, but it makes sense to practice these things. Again, it's not even necessarily about your answer, but more about kind of getting used and sort of being ready to, you know, not sort of choking on the microphone kind of thing. So, you know, I would highly recommend that. And sort of similar advice to that is, you know, steer the conversations. They might be asking a slightly different question, but you might see that as an opportunity to kind of talk about an important achievement that you had during your education or a previous role or whatever. And, you know, very important, be yourself. We talked about honesty, be calm, be confident. And like I say, you made it this far. You know, if you're talking to someone over a video call or they've invited you to the studio, you know, it means that they've invested in you over all the previous stages, and they're actually rooting for you to do well. So, you know, keep that in mind. If you're there and they're interviewing you virtually or in the flesh, it means that they actually want you to succeed. So, you know, keep that in mind. Right, and my last slide is, you're in. I just thought I'd put some more tips here in terms of what happens after. And just briefly, you know, people have been talking about imposter syndrome recently. It's great to see people, you know, talk about that. It's something that I, you know, definitely when I joined Lionhead back in the day, it was something I felt kind of on a daily basis. It's fine, you know, if you have imposter syndrome, it means that you're someone who pushes to improve, and that's, you know, usually that's a really good quality, and people want that. You'll see my other tip is ask questions, and you see features a few times. That's another thing I always stress to, you know, junior hires. There's a tendency to kind of go away and solve problems. Again, I understand where that comes from, but it can be counterintuitive. Like you might be spending more time trying to figure out something out just because you don't want to be seen as someone who doesn't know the answer to that question. But actually, you know, you're taking longer. Speaking of longer, you know, don't underestimate, again, there's a tendency for junior people to kind of, you know, show that they can do this, be independent. That's great, but you know, you usually don't realize that there's no expectation from your producer or your lead just yet to be able to do these things. So make sure you keep them in the loop, communicate, yeah, have fun. Just notice there's 4 minutes left on the clock, so I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully, there's a lot of ground to cover. I was going a bit fast, but hopefully useful stuff there for you. I think there's some questions. So if I figure out how I can stop sharing screen, there you go.
Thank you so much, Costas. What a thorough process that is, hey? I don't think you left out anything. It's brilliant. Yeah, I think that's great to know how the mindset's going from the other side of the interview process. So that was very useful. We've actually got a question from Christopher saying, from your experience, how much personal input do you have on a game inside a AAA studio?
It's a really good question. It obviously really depends on the role. So from my personal experience, I can talk about, I think when I started at Lionhead, I was a tools coder, specifically working on audio tools. And yeah, within, obviously, you know, you as a junior tools coder at the time, you're given kind of a task, and then within the sort of spectrum of that task, yes, you have a lot of input, and as you observe kind of the pain points of different users. Again, for me, kind of being a tools coder, was very much my kind of customer was the content creation team in the studio as opposed to the player. Was a fair amount of input. The AAA studios is a huge fragmentation, obviously, with the roles. You know, when they're trying to tackle massive projects like that, you know, people use the term sort of the cog in the machine, and it is true. You know, I can sort of be facetious about that, but you know, it's kind of the only way you can make massive games like that. For me, you know, moving on to kind of working on the port for Fable 3, I guess that was a time when I had a lot more sort of input. Again, because we're kind of a tiny team. At the start of that project, there was like, I think four of us working on the PC port. So there was a lot of kind of, I guess, more fun sort of design kind of decisions around how we do that. Yeah, I think if I try to read between the lines of that question, certainly, you know, kind of being in this space is where you want to be. If you're someone who feels like they want to have that sort of input, you know, on our 15-person team, every day, people from any kind of discipline have to make decisions that impact the sort of end result, because, you know, there's no other way. We have to do that because you know, we're still trying to do big things with kind of little resources, and that means that everyone has to be able to kind of be independent within their decision making to a large extent. And again, this is something that we look for in the hiring process. But AAA studios is definitely kind of a really good way to learn, like I said at the start, with support, so that, you know, if you maybe want to get to that point where you're confident and comfortable kind of wearing different hats and assuming large areas of responsibility, you know, at a AAA studio, you'll have the support you need, I think, to get there. If you don't feel like you're there just yet. Hope that answers the question.
That's brilliant. Thank you. I'm aware that it is 12 o'clock and I'm sure you're quite busy today.
Yeah, I'm at WASD. I don't know if there's anyone here. You can find me on Twitter. Feel free to DM me if you want to ask more questions or just say hello. I'm going to be here tomorrow as well. Or, you know, just feel free to reach out on Twitter, email, whatever. I'm more than happy to help.
Christopher's actually asking you what's your Twitter.
It's either Rogue Sun Games is the studio Twitter. If there's a question there for me, it will find its way to me. My personal Twitter is Costas_Zerifis, because there's another Costas Zerifis without the underscore. He's got like 4 followers as well. So what's the point? I know.
He's got to nick them from him.
Yeah.
Well, Christos, thank you very much for your time today.
No worries.
I hope you enjoy the rest of WAS.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye now.
Right, everyone. So that's the first half of the day done. We're going to take about an hour's break. But for those of you who still want to watch something in the background or feel like you need something stimulating while eating your sandwiches, I've actually got a video that we can play. It's one of Ukie's hub crawls, which is like talks that we do, obviously the last one being virtual. But the topic was the what and how of blockchain and NFT for the games industry, which was quite well received. So I'm just going to play that in the background. So watch it if you want to. If not, we'll see you back at 1 o'clock. Our very own Dom is going to be talking about EDI. Actually, what's the EDI for students? EDI can empower students on their journey into games. So that sounds like an interesting one. Let me share my screen. It's always awkward when you don't share your screen while talking, so there has to be that weird like pause.
Yeah, so feel free to kind of have the conference, the Zoom open, and then we'll be back at 1, won't we?
Yeah. Probably 5 to 1, just in case.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, back at 1 for Dom, and then we've got Jason who's going to finish up today. So thanks, Kirsty, for getting up there. Hub Crawl Talk.
No problem.
And we'll see you all back here at 1.
Yeah. Cheers, guys.
With Peter. So how are you doing, Peter? You okay?
Yeah, I'm doing really good. Thank you very much. Excited to talk about NFTs and law.
NFTs and law. Am I allowed to say you're an upgrade? Because we had one of your colleagues lined up, and you were dropped in at the last minute.
Well, I mean, Paul wasn't here, so I mean, you can definitely say that.
Yeah, well,
exactly.
Lovely. Appreciate you stepping in and looking after this for us. So I will mute myself, turn my video off, and hand over to you.
Cool, thanks. I'm just gonna share some slides so we can see them. Is that okay? Is that cool?
I can see your slides perfectly. Yeah, full screen. Thank you.
Awesome.
Over to you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming along, and thanks, Ukie, for hosting me and giving me the chance to talk about legal and regulatory stuff around games and NFTs and games. So, real quick bit about me. My name is Pete Lewin. I'm a senior associate at Wigan in the games esports teams. I've been a video games lawyer my entire professional career, and I work with game developers, publishers, tech providers, esports companies, and influencers across a whole range of commercial stuff, IP, and regulatory. So blockchain and NFTs fits nicely within IP and that regulatory work. So really briefly, you can see on the slide what we're going to cover today. Obviously, the most important bit of why you're here listening to me, as opposed to all these other great speakers, which we'll come to later. Section 3, the legal and regulatory bits. So what is an NFT? I don't want to sit here and tell anyone how to suck eggs, and I really don't want to rehash old news. You probably all know tons about NFTs, but I don't want to assume any prior knowledge. So an NFT is a non-fungible token. It's a unique digital asset that exists on a blockchain, of which there are many different blockchains. And the NFT itself, it's really a link or a bit of data that usually links to an underlying asset somewhere else. And that asset could be a digital image like the bored apes you're seeing at the bottom here, or it could theoretically be something in the real world like a car or a piece of artwork. It could be tons of stuff. But it's quite an important distinction to make that when we're talking about an NFT, we are really talking about the piece of code and the metadata and not really the underlying asset. And I'll come back to this question around ownership later. So NFTs and games, I've kind of tried to put these into a few different buckets on the screen here as to how I'm kind of seeing them deployed in games at the moment, and this could change. And just important to note that these aren't how they're classified from a regulatory point of view. This is purely in my mind how I like to think of them. So you've got the collectibles, which are really NFTs. They don't really have any in-game utilization. It could be something just like an NFT of a piece of artwork or game screenshot. A good example is Konami with their Castlevania Anniversary NFTs. You've got item NFTs, so that's usually something with in-game utility, like a game weapon or a character or a piece of in-game land or a skin. And there's tons of examples of those. You've got Ubisoft with their helmets, their in-game guns in Ghost Recon. You've got the collectible cards, Splinterlands. You've got the Axes in Axie Infinity, and you've got Decentraland with their plots of in-game land. And then you've got this third bucket, this governance and utility tokens, which actually quite often aren't NFTs, but they're usually just some other form of crypto asset. But these are usually tokens that have some sort of rights attached to them or give you certain access within a game or service. So that could be like access to a game, or it could give you voting rights in a decision, something called a DAO, which I'm not going to have time to get into, but you could be given rights to vote in how games are run. So some quite cool potentials there. So now on the screen here, obviously there's like a lot of discussion going on around NFTs, and I've tried to put down what some of the main threads around the potential pros are, as well as some of the potential cons. I'm really not here to advocate for or against NFTs in games. That's not my role, but I do think it's really important for anyone considering to like implement NFTs within games to think obviously about the legal and regulatory aspect. That's the most important part to me, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff to think about here as well. So really do look at the bigger entire picture. I don't have time to get into all of these here, but if you've got any questions about any of them, shoot me a line, put a question down below. So legal and regulatory challenges. Well, the short answer is it's really complicated, and it's complicated because some NFT projects are really complicated, and they can throw up such a wide range of issues that it's sometimes quite difficult to either begin identifying the issues and then to start sifting through them to figure out which ones you prioritize, which ones are the most important things you actually have to consider now. That said, I've tried to put them into 4 buckets here of things that I'm going to be talking through, the first of which is financial regulation. So the first thing to note with financial regulation, which obviously is the topic that a lot of games businesses are used to dealing with, but the important thing to note is that it's really different all around the world. And that's true with a lot of laws, like most laws differ around the world, but particularly when it comes to financial regulation. So what might be okay in one territory might not be okay at all in a different territory, or something might be okay in both territories, but there might be subtle but really important differences about how you can, say, advertise something. So in the UK, I've put on the slide here some of the buckets, the areas of financial regulation that might be applicable to businesses, games businesses, depending on what part of the, let's just call it the NFT ecosystem that they are operating in. So, for example, investment regulation, which talks a lot about securities, that might be applicable to every single company operating within the ecosystem that in any way touches an NFT if it's classified as security. Whereas money laundering stuff might be more applicable if you're operating a crypto exchange. or if you're operating a crypto wallet. So again, different things apply to different players in the industry. So looking at investment regulation in the UK, this is regulated by the FCA. And the FCA has essentially lumped all of crypto assets into 4 categories at the moment. Those categories are exchange tokens, utility tokens, e-money, and security tokens. And right now, only those last 2 are regulated by the FCA, the e-money and the securities, whereas exchange and utility aren't regulated by the FCA. So just to take a step back, utility tokens are usually, as the name suggests, something which gives you utility, which could be, for example, access to a product or service, or maybe an in-game feature. Whereas a security, that's usually something which starts smelling and looking more like a share in a company. It might carry certain rights and obligations. It might be used for capital raising purposes. It might give you an entitlement to revenue of a particular project. So utility, unregulated, securities, regulated. And where a lot of the things that games businesses are doing right now, which bucket it would fit into, is a really quite complicated question. And it's made no easier by the fact that the FCA have said that a token can be many different types of assets throughout the course of its life cycle. So something could be a utility token as well as a security token at the same time, or maybe one becomes the other. So it's quite challenging. So if you're doing a games project and you're issuing tokens that start smelling, looking like securities, you need to pay extra attention there, because if you are dealing with regulated securities, then a bunch of other stuff like financial promotion rules start kicking in. Okay, so that's financial regulation. Intellectual property. So the first thing I've got here is ownership. And that's because a lot of the times when people say they're buying NFTs, they go, oh, this is great, I get to own things. I get ownership of what I have bought. But a lot of the times I think that's quite misleading language, because when you're buying an NFT, you're not really buying the underlying asset to which the NFT is connected. You might just be buying that specific digital copy of that asset, or not at all. So a lot of the times what is happening is the creator of the NFT will retain the ownership, the copyright in the underlying asset, and they will only give the buyer a very limited set of rights and permissions to do things with that NFT. Quite a lot of the times that's restricted to reselling the NFT, or maybe using it for very limited commercial or non-commercial purposes. So ownership is perhaps not the most clear term that we could be using there, at least from a legal point of view. So setting out in your terms of service what the ownership position is and what buyers can and can't do with your NFTs, super important. On terms of service themselves, definitely need to have these. I think there's a really big question at the moment regarding incorporation of those terms of service into the user flow at the moment. So you might be familiar that when you boot up a lot of games, you'll click to accept the terms of service, maybe their privacy policy, and that's kind of what gets the binding acceptance to that very important legal contract. But I could go out and I could buy an NFT on a third-party marketplace for a game that I've never even booted up. And I could potentially buy that NFT and never really have agreed to the terms of service or terms binding that NFT. Yes, they're on a website, but have I agreed to them? So I think incorporation of terms and conditions into the kind of user flow and purchase of NFTs is going to be a really important thing, and a quite big challenge, in my opinion. Third-party content. Short story here is if you're making NFTs to feature any third-party content, that could be image rights, music, it could be artwork. Make sure that you're really checking those licenses super carefully to make sure that you've actually got the rights to make them and then to continue distributing them, because you don't want the license to end and then you've got to try and unravel all of those NFTs, because that'd be really tricky. Okay, on to consumer and child protection. So this, I think, is going to be one of the areas that the businesses in this space have challenges with the most, to be honest. And there's a ton of law that we can't really get into here. But a really broad tenet of consumer protection is that you've got to be clear with consumers upfront about what they're buying, what they're paying for, what rights they get. And I think that's going to be quite challenging for these really complex crypto projects, particularly where a lot of the rules for that project might not even be known at the time of, say, issuing a token and getting users to buy in. That might be particularly true with DAOs when it comes to like operating game decisions, what things are going to be voted on, what the voting mechanics are, will the rules around voting change? So being able to provide consumers with all that information up front is going to be really challenging. So you might not always know it. And then there's also quite an interesting question which hasn't really been tested yet around refund rights, because in Europe you're kind of entitled to a refund of digital goods within a certain amount of time. And that's not really been tested yet in relation to NFTs. How would that even work? Would it be possible? How do you reverse transactions on the blockchain? Then you've got terms of service. So clearly, like I said before, you need a terms of service for your game. And a lot of businesses in the space are taking quite a hard line into their terms of service. A lot of the times they're really dense, they're really heavy, they disclaim all of their liability, they're 30 pages long, and they're just linked to somewhere else, which is definitely one way to do things. But if you want to make sure that you've got enforceable terms of service, then there are certain restrictions and limitations around how you can limit your liability, what things you need to signpost to users. So it's not just a case of having a terms of service that gets you high and dry or clear of all the issues, but having one that's enforceable is another separate question that can be quite challenging in a B2C context. Then you've got advertising you need to pay careful attention to. So in the UK, there's the Advertising Standards Authority, and they've really taken quite a hard line against a lot of crypto advertisements, particularly in relation to fan tokens in the football space, for failing to essentially disclose the financial risk associated with participating in them. So being careful of advertising rules. And then child protection, it's a whole topic in its own right. We don't have time to go into, but there's this one thing called the Children's Code in particular. It's a new piece of guidance from the Data Protection Authority. And this is something which might require businesses to essentially assess the dangers or the risks that their products pose to children, which is anyone under 18. And it can encompass financial risks posed by NFTs, and then figuring out how to mitigate those risks, or maybe assess the age of their users, maybe block certain users, or maybe disable functionality for certain categories of users. And then last year, this is basically a slide for a whole bunch of really important things, but ones that I just don't have time to talk about here today. So security, there's going to be wallet security, exchange security, and you get smart contract vulnerabilities. There are going to be issues there, and there are definitely going to be questions about liability allocation and who's responsible for what's gone wrong. You've got platform regulation. So Steam, Valve has already come out and said you're not going to get blockchain games on Steam. Epic has said you might get it on Epic Games Store. I think the position is a little bit less clear around Apple, given their kind of rules around in-app purchases, how that would work with NFTs purchased, maybe outside of the ecosystem. You've got gambling. I think just with any games business, you really need to be taking a look at specific game mechanics as well as your game as a whole to make sure that you're not falling afoul of any gambling issues there. I think that's potentially a big issue for projects featuring reading mechanics or chance-based mechanics. You've got data protection. Data protection is a big fun issue to do with blockchain in general, but I think it's going to pose interesting questions for games businesses. Just as an example, how is your customer support team going to be dealing with issues posed by consumers, say they've lost their NFTs? It's going to be quite hard to track a lot of that stuff because yes, you can track transactions on the blockchain, but there is anonymity kind of baked into the whole idea of the blockchain. So how do you track and trace all that stuff? Or is it just really difficult? And then tax. And I put this on here both for considerations for people issuing NFTs and crypto assets, but also for the players, because arguably they are transacting in capital goods, maybe generating capital gains, issues there. So whose responsibility is it to kind of think and flag those? So wrapping it up, I think about time. There's no one type of NFT. So I think when we're talking about the risks here, it's really worth bearing that in mind. There's no one size fit all approach for all NFT strategies. I think there's potential opportunities for NFTs in games, but they're, like I've just shown, potentially significant challenges, whether that's commercial, technical, ethical, legal. This is a new space. People are doing new things with the technology, so there's novel and new questions all the time. So there's not always a preset answer for a lot of those things. That's navigating shades of gray. Crypto regulation is evolving really quickly, and games are not at the forefront of those advancements at all. So the industry is going to get basically dragged along for a lot of new regulations and rules that are being created for the financial sector primarily, but which might apply to games in certain circumstances. And kind of wrapping all this together, anyone thinking about putting NFTs in games, you really need to look at your own strategy, your own implementations, what you're proposing users have rights to do, and do a fact-specific analysis of your own strategy. Because, like I say, you can't just really look at what everyone else is doing and say, if that's okay, then it's probably okay for me too. And that's it. That's 15 minutes. I could probably talk for another couple of hours about this, but I think I'm at time. So I don't know if I have any time for questions. If not, then fire me a message, or you've got my contact details on the slide here. Thanks for listening.
Peter, that's great. Thank you very much indeed. If you just leave it on the screen for a second and stop sharing screen, and we can get you in full screen. A couple of questions for you, if that's okay.
Stop.
So,
Hi all. Just in case there's any newcomers, it's just that we are having a break, and I'm just playing a pub crawl video about NFT blockchains. So that is why it's not live recording, but we will be back at 1 o'clock and joined by Dom Shaw about EDI and how that can help students get into the gamers industry. So I'll carry on with the recording.
period for an NFT and then relicense it afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. I mean, when you're giving a license, you can really set the, if we're excluding blockchain from it for a moment, you can really set the license terms to be whatever you want. Whenever you're giving a license over IP, you can set the time, duration, the rev share, any aspect that you want of it. And duration is definitely one of those. So I don't see why you couldn't put in the terms and conditions of your NFT. Hey, you're only getting a license for 10 years. After that, it reverts to me. How that works technically on the blockchain and what actually happens to that NFT afterwards. I guess there's a question there, which I'm not sure of the answer to. Maybe the kind of, it just stops giving access to the in-game functionality after that 10-year time. And there's some smart thing with the game to track that. Essentially, the NFT just dies after 10 years. But yeah, you could definitely, whenever you're doing an asset, put something like a time restriction on it.
You also mentioned, thank you for that. You also mentioned about, I hadn't really thought of this. So thanks for getting me thinking as well, which is always a good thing to do at this time of day. I view this as being this is a game thing, this is a games industry thing. But as you're quite right, the driver behind this may well be other sectors such as financial institutions. So, is there any legislation that you're hearing about, hearing rumblings around for financial institutions that's therefore going to have an impact on how we adopt this kind of technology? Is there anything coming through that,
Yeah, I mean, in the UK, again, financial regulation is my personal area of specialism. But I know this is changing literally in the coming weeks. And I put on the slide there like 5 different buckets of areas of regulation. That is literally like the headline summary of like some giant swathes of other legislation and rules that fall within each of those buckets. So are things kind of changing and are things in the pipeline? Yes, absolutely. In the coming weeks and months and over the course of the year, I think the FCA is probably going to change its position on things, and things are going to be brought within regulation that previously might not have been caught within it. So, not aware of literal specific pieces of legislation to be aware of, but a lot of this stuff is just generally moving and kind of new guidance is being put out all the time.
Wonderful. No surprise there, I guess. So thank you for taking that one on. There's a question in the chat from WL. If you can just type a little answer in there, that would be greatly appreciated. But thanks to our audience. Well, thank you, Peter. I'll let you go away now. Thank you very much for that. And I welcome Tom and James from Helicon NFT. So if you turn your cameras and sound on and then say hello, you'll be...
Hello, everyone. How are we doing?
Hello. Yeah, wonderful.
Hi, guys. How you doing?
Lots of questions there from the audience, so keep them coming in the Q&A section. Greatly appreciate that. James and Tom, I don't know who's speaking first. I'm going to let you decide, and I'll turn my camera off. Over to you two. Thank you.
Well, no worries. Yeah, I think James, you can probably start off with the introduction, if that's all right.
Yeah. First of all, thank you, Peter, for that. I mean, obviously, we've built a platform, and obviously, we're taking advice. And one of the things that fascinated me there was the regulations differ per country, and that's a very good point. Actually, I thought that was a very, very informative and very interesting from the legal standpoint. So it's given us food for thought on some of the things that we need to be thinking about, because obviously one of our key aspects of our business with launching a play-to-earn gaming ecosystem is that we want to be audited, we want to be scrutinized, we want to be doing things properly, and that will differ from country to country. So first of all, anyway, thanks, Peter, and to introduce ourselves. I won't go on for too long. I know we've got a limited time here, but thank you, Sam, and thank you, Ukie, for the opportunity to discuss this with you today. Tom and I have been working in the gaming events business for a few years now. We've worked on various licenses. We launched gaming festivals in Dubai and in Saudi Arabia. We started learning about the blockchain space and understanding the play to earn, largely due to the fact that we thought and this will be terribly unpopular with some of the games, so I apologize in advance, but we felt there needed to be a little bit more fairness in terms of sharing and the ability for the gamer to be able to transfer in-game assets and have some ownership, etc. So Peter's certainly raised a few very, very interesting points there. And I'll let Tom explain a little bit more about who we are and what we're doing, and maybe do you want to share this? You want me to share the screen, Tom, so you can?
Yeah, feel free to share the slide. What I'm going to do is I'll just give you guys a quick overview of who we are as Helicon NFT, what we're doing, why we're doing what we're doing, and then the slide will be a little bit more catered towards the developers and such within gaming as well. So. Yeah, I'll just get into that if that's all right. So Helicon NFT is all about putting the power back into the hands of the gamer, as James rightly said. I've been a gamer my whole life, and when the shift towards microtransaction happened, I thought it was interesting. But it was a great way for developers to make a lot more money, and a great way for gamers to play games that have been reinvested into. It's fascinating. But now blockchains come along, we've got play to earn gaming, and we believe that it's only fair that the gamers are able to extract what they put into a game and back out of it again. And that's...
Sorry, I do apologize. Is that the right term?
No, actually, sorry, that's not. You're looking for Helicon NFT Deck 2022.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys. Apologies.
That's okay. We'll get there. So we are the first all-encompassing ecosystem of its kind. Gamers will be able to monetize their in-game assets to buy and sell these NFTs through our marketplace, which we call the Helicon Marketplace. And they'll be using our governance token, which is called the Helicon Drachma token, HDT for short. And that sort of threads everything together for us within our ecosystem. We are aggregating existing games to be blockchain and NFT enabled for a true intergaming experience within the metaverse as well. So that's where we differ from some of the, by no means are we the first to make a blockchain game. We're not a first marketplace for NFTs either, but we are the first to aggregate it all under one umbrella. So even without playing games, where it really differs from anyone else doing blockchain games is that we're not only offering gamers the chance to control their assets and earn and trade on a marketplace, but even if you don't play games, you can still benefit from our fundamental system that we've built, that we've called Agora. And that consists of our marketplace, our yield aggregators, the decentralized governance, and what we call our Helicon add-on system, which is, our developers working with game developers in order to turn it into a blockchain and NFT-enabled game. And so within our marketplace, we've created a unique feature called Master NFTs. It's a way for people to earn from liquidity mining and regular NFT trading. And essentially, that's a smart contract, which is held for a maximum of 24 hours. And that enables the holder to earn 5% of all mining rewards. So we've got 9 liquidity mining pools. So those who don't want to play games, or those who want some passive earning opportunities, that's all under the same Helicon NFT umbrella as well. I should say regular NFTs are the in-game assets that can be traded or exchanged on our marketplace. And those will be categorized automatically to one of 9 master NFT pools. And then that's created through our game interface. Now, where that is interesting when it comes to developers is this is where the royalties get set by the creators of these NFTs. So to earn from future transactions, which adds a new layer of revenue to what you guys have with your games and what the developers are building with the economy of their games, that new layer of revenue is not taking anything away from what your game already has. It's actually a new economy that we can implement and work with your teams to implement into the game. The fantastic thing that we've found so far is that gamers are very receptive to blockchain gaming because the mechanics aren't all that different. I mean, take Fortnite, for example, you still have to spend fiat real world money to buy V-Bucks in order to spend those in the game. With blockchain gaming, that's not too different, except for the fact that the V-Bucks would have real world value outside of the game, and the skin that you're buying, you can then sell to someone else, for example. And then, going into the sort of community element is we want to run some esports tournaments, and through developers, we can create a one-of-one NFT that, through winning the tournament, only one person gets to win that. And now suddenly that NFT is unique and, would have a higher price on the secondary market because of it. So what we've designed is a Helicon add-on system. And I think personally that adds the most exciting part for the developers and their players as well. So still the wrong slide deck there, James. We'll find it. I mean, I'll put it on in a minute, if not, once I've gone through my spiel. But so once the games have connected to us through our game interface gateway, we'll work with the developers of those games to add normal game functions to these new NFT assets. So that allows players to upgrade them, or for example, depending on your game mechanics, you could enchant a weapon to make it more powerful, for example, because as we know, non-fungible means it can't be changed. So if we're implementing NFTs into a game, we have to have some kind of functions that allows them to be slightly fungible in a way, depending on what your game mechanics are. And every game is different. Every game is going to be different. Every conversation is going to be unique because each game economy is going to be separate. A lot of the gamers that we're talking to and the developers we're speaking to at the moment, they're sort of at the stage of, for example, they're about 70% of the way through launching a game. However, during that time, blockchain and play-to-earn gaming came along, and now they want to revamp the economy within the game, and that's where our team comes in. So we want, as Helicon, we want the lines between what we call blockchain games and traditional games to become increasingly blurry. We want the user experience to become seamless. Right now, there's a lot of barriers to entry. I think that's one of the first hurdles that we're going to have to overcome. You don't want a $500 price point just to start playing a game. You don't want to have your users set up 5 different wallets and 3 different exchanges in order to play your game as well. So we want it to get to the point where someone's playing a game in the future and they may not even know that it's a blockchain game. So we want to make that as seamless as possible by bridging the gap between these centralized games and decentralized NFTs, and sort of striking a balance between providing an enjoyable gaming experience and incentivizing participation from the gamers as well. That's sort of what we're doing in a nutshell. And where we're up to at the moment is, we'll show you in the deck, is that we're on our roadmap. We have a whitelist for our own NFT project launching, but more than anything else, we're just aggressively speaking to any and all game developers at the moment, in order for us to learn as well, because the more questions we get asked, the more games that we discuss, the more in-game mechanics that we need to talk about, the more things we can implement as well. So we're going around associations, we're speaking to studios individually about their games. We've already onboarded some partners that we'll show you as well. So we're quite far down the line. We've got a great community at the moment, and they're all expecting, our launch and our new games now. We are building our own game in the background, I should say, although that's obviously going to be further down the pipeline as well. So let me see if I can pull up this deck at the moment to go through it real quick for you guys, seeing as James can't find it.
Apologies for that, guys. I have no idea why it's not sharing, but you've got it.
Sorry, guys. Can you see this? Okay, I'm not sure what you're seeing.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. All good.
Thank you. Yeah, no problem at all. So yeah, we're going to go through. Obviously, what I said earlier is this. Who we are. We're tokenizing centralized games. We're a DeFi, NFT, and blockchain gaming ecosystem. We built on the Binance Smart Chain. I think that's quite important to bring up now. We spent a long time researching what chain we should build on. And what reasons for those, and there's a lot of options these days, which is a fantastic thing for the industry. We explored a lot of layer 2 solutions, some fantastic ones there, and came very close to building on Arbitrum 1 or Immutable X. Again, fantastic layer 2 solutions run by extremely smart people. However, it comes back down to the barrier of entry again. In doing these layer 2 solutions, there's still a long process of having to get a token from somewhere, exchange it somewhere else, add it to a liquidity pool, and then you get an item that you're able to use in the game. And we wanted to make sure that we started off on the right foot in making sure that the seamlessness was happening from day one. We chose Binance Smart Chain because of their advancements in smart contracts and basically their plans for the future as well. We think it's fantastic what they're doing with it. And what that means is that the end user experience is going to vastly improve. They're not going to have to spend so much just to start playing the game. So therefore, you're not cutting out a sort of chunk of your audience who may not be as affluent. There's a lot that goes into these kind of things as well. So this is the sort of overview of our roadmap at the moment. Obviously, we're here, at the moment. And yeah, so integration with our GPs means our game partners, our front end user interface is being completed as well at the moment. And right now, as I said earlier, we are building an NFT project, an NFT launch, in that people will be receiving in-game items as the NFTs. And then later on down the line, they'll be able to port those into the game, upgrade them, obviously sell them on the secondary market. And this is basically how we're building community now without having the product available to everyone immediately. And we find this stuff really interesting. Another great point that Peter made earlier, and obviously something that we all need to consider in this industry, is where the big boys stand on this new industry. So we know where Steam stands, we know where Epic stands. And in a way, I think that's actually a really good thing. Steam making the announcement that they made shows a lot of gamers their intentions for the future and their IPs. And then you get, on the flip side of that, in the blockchain world, people are building these decentralized autonomous organizations whereby anybody who, for example, if you launched a game with us and you launched a token with us, anybody who holds an NFT or one of your tokens is now a stakeholder in your company. They should have a say in what happens with that. And that's where the decentralized autonomous organizations come into play. We can have voting systems. It comes down to the NFTs, which gives you access to VIP or voting, the utilities that Peter had also mentioned. There's really interesting and new innovative ways of engaging your community. But what we find based off the back of where Steam stands is that it would only succeed if you're open to everyone, if gamers have a say, if they have operational control of their own assets, if they get to have a say in what happens within a game itself or within our ecosystem. Because at the end of the day, once we release Helicon NFT out there, we don't operate it anymore. It's the decentralized autonomous organization that's going to be making these recommendations to us in order to implement for improvement going forward. Another big thing that we're focusing on at the moment is auditing. Now, I'm involved in, or I should say, I've been keeping an eye on a lot of NFT projects recently. A lot of them start off as the NFT project, and then further down the line, it's leading towards a game, which is fine. It's absolutely fantastic. As I said earlier, I think it's a really interesting way to fundraise for these projects. However, Peter will say that opens you up to a lot of legal issues, I'm sure. So when it comes down to auditing, people will, and they do expect you to be completely open and upfront about where the money's going, what you're using it for, even things to be how effective is your decentralized autonomous organization. Users buy into that, and it's really important for us to be open and transparent about these kind of things. And that actually leads me on to our roadmap highlights, carbon offsetting as well. This is another major thing that I shouldn't describe it as a thing. It's a major world problem that is being addressed heavily at the moment. And of course, it's a big topic when it comes into crypto and blockchain. We absolutely are conscious of our energy consumption. There are multiple ways that we can offset that through buying carbon tokens, for example. We're speaking with some fantastic partners at the moment, even someone who's building a play-to-earn game that has a real-world plan in order to, plant new trees and such through the utilization of the game. And these are fantastic initiatives. So we will be partnering with those people. We are extremely conscious of our carbon footprint as well. And we are absolutely conscious of what our audience wants in the sense that if they don't have a voice, we don't see the sustainability behind it. So we've heard your pain point, the developers. They've got notorious pain points. Discoverability, marketing is always going to be difficult. We as Helicon NFT, obviously, we allowed you to tokenize your games. We would work with you on the marketing. And I'd love to link you up. Unfortunately, our marketing manager, Claire, is not here today, put this fantastic slide together, but she'll talk to you guys all day about the marketing of how to promote these games. And I think that is almost more important at this stage, to talk about how you're going to promote the game than to give everyone the technical details of how the economy of the game is going to work. People are buying into the idea at the sort of early stages as well. So that's sort of where we come in. That's how we partner with you guys. We're increasing your game discoverability. We're blockchain enabling your game, gaining new players, adding new layers of revenue to it. It's early days at the moment. This is what's really interesting about this. Is, at the moment, there's got to be probably just over 1,000 blockchain games, a lot more in development, I'm sure, at the moment. Compare that to what we know, as traditional games, there's over 1 million these days. So it's extremely early days, and that's why we find this so exciting. We think this now is the right time to get this up and running as well. So again, we're open to speaking to any developers at the moment. It's super easy, 100% free at the moment. All we ask of you guys is to have a conversation with us and just to talk to us about your game vision, because at the end of the day, we are not a game studio. We don't build storylines to the games. The innovative storylines and the amazing games that have come out is something that we want to celebrate and enhance going forward. So we don't want to take anything away from that. We're going to let you guys do what you do best, but that's where we come in with the blockchain expertise and the marketing expertise as well, plus the overall ecosystem of which ultimately we want it to be a one-stop shop for developers, for the gamers, for ourselves, people who are interested in making some passive income from our token as well. We just want to be a one-stop shop, everything gaming, along with onboarding a lot of game partners as well as we go through it. So the onboarding phase is fairly simple. Once we get to that stage, it would only be sort of 4-step process. We're agreeing on a partnership. We'll talk about the promotion, and this is the biggest part for us, is how we're going to market it, how we're going to promote you guys. We have a lot of, James will be able to explain this a little bit better than I can, but it's a lot more than just what we're doing with the Helicon NFT. We also have the media company behind it as well. We're creating a studio. We have multiple events. We just launched a blockchain event in Abu Dhabi in December quite successfully. We had some fantastic contacts, and I'm now based here in New York. So we're going to be rolling out our services out here in terms of our promotion, in terms of speaking to all of the developers, and just trying to get some round tables going with developers so we can hear from you exactly what you would expect or what your concerns might be, because that only helps us, and then we can give Peter a call and figure out what we need to do legally as well afterward. I'm joking, be facetious, of course, but just some of our current partners at the moment. We've got some amazing partners. This IndaHash campaign is really exciting. They work with over 1 million influencers and celebrities. A very impressive pipeline of their celebrities at the moment. And what they do is they for example, if you like the FaZe clan and you have a skin in your Fortnite game, these guys are able to create an NFT with that skin with like a signature of your favorite celebrity on it. So ultimately, we could be partnering up with some of the biggest esports, 100 Thieves in some of the biggest esports teams in the world, and they could be giving unique NFTs away as prizes for their tournaments, and they'll be signed. And it's a new way to interact with your users. It's a new way for the users to show off some things within the game as well. It's like, yeah, you might have that skin, but do you have that skin signed by this celebrity kind of thing? It's just it's really fantastic. And then just lastly, feeding into the current game partners, we've got Bad Fox Studios from the UK, Infinite 8 creating some amazing games at the moment, Gen Meta as well with some fantastic plans, Land Rocker, Super Squad, all these things, all these guys are fantastic in building games, and all of them are interested in blockchain and the potential in the future. So not only are we working with these games, but these guys are helping us refine what we're doing as well. And that's only going to continue once we sign on more and more partners. So I would say, unless James has any better sign off from that, I would say our goal is at the moment to just speak to any and all developers. We want to hear where you're at with your games, what your plans are, and what your questions might be about blockchain. Because then at that point, we can start evaluating it on a case-by-case basis. You know, yes, the economy of this model would work perfectly for you, or, you know, perhaps you've even got a game that is blockchain and you're looking to, you know, help with the marketing, help with the promotion. We are a very global company at the moment. As I said, I'm here in New York. James and some of the team are in Dubai. We have offices in London as well, and in China and Australia. So we're not beholden to one area. And that's actually why the point that Peter raised earlier about, you know, sort of terms and conditions and legalities across in different markets is a fascinating one for us. But yeah, I mean, that's who we are. That's what we're doing, and that's where we're up to. So I really want to thank Ukie and Sam for your time here today. Open to any and all questions. Like I said, we're happy to send you this. We'll send you our overall deck, our website as well. But we're very active on Discord in terms of answering questions. Host regular AMA sessions as well. And we'd love to do this again and again, just to get as much information as possible from where the market's at the moment.
That's great. Thank you very much, Tom, for that presentation. As you say, we will share the slides afterwards. We're a little bit behind schedule. I'm just going to pop one question, if that's okay. And then
that's all right. I waffled on, did I?
Well, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's all good, informative stuff. Yeah. And that's what people are here for. So that's good. There's a couple of things in the Q&A you can have a look at afterwards. Question from NP and a question from AA would be helpful. Glenn's questions we're going to cover in the panel later, actually. But I mean, you're already working with studios. When you talk to studios and you've got 4 or 5 signed up there already, what are the key things that you're doing that really attracts those studios to your platform?
That's a great question. I would say marketing, but I'll let James elaborate.
Yeah, I think essentially, as Tom said, most of it is about collaboration. Most of it's about working with them to find out what the key areas support that they're looking for. So it could be strategic partners, it could be marketing, advertising, publicity, PR, social media. We reached 70 million people with our gaming festivals a couple of years ago. So we've got access to a lot of new audiences, which I think makes us a little bit unique in the fact that we can open up to markets that perhaps some of the developers wouldn't have had access to. So the visibility is a huge thing. I think one of the key points we're finding with most of them, you know, throughout the Middle East and Africa, where I'm based at the moment, obviously there's a massive audience that very often publishers neglect themselves, to be honest. But you know, if you think of an audience of 500 million people, and then obviously that suddenly expands into 2 billion people if you take Africa and India. You know, you're already going into you know, sort of a third of the world's population, which is huge. Marketing and reaching those people is extremely difficult, and I think we open up to new audiences. It's one of the big parts of marketing, as Tom said. We also have a studio where we actually produce content, and you know, we're producing some shows and video content. So essentially, things that they may spend a lot of money on. Normally, in marketing, we're cutting that out for them and offering that inclusive as part of the service for no charge. So I think that's a huge, unique selling point, basically.
That's fabulous. Thank you very much, and certainly some food for thought there for studios. So we'll show you
happy to answer these questions afterwards. Don't worry, I'll type them out.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed for doing that, Tom, and thank you, James.
Thank you.
Moving on, going to invite David Amor to join us from Playmint. So if James and Tom, you can turn those cameras off and sound off, and
no problem.
David, hello. Yeah, thank you. David, how are you? You all right? Lovely to see you.
Likewise, nice to see you.
You're always perfect, aren't you? Let's be honest.
I'm nervous. I can't share my screen. Sometimes happens, isn't it?
Well, is there anything behind you, by the way, we shouldn't be looking at? No, is there anything on that whiteboard?
Well, you know, blockchain is all about developing in the open. I did consider that. It would be, it's fine, I think. All right, I'm checking. I can see that.
I can see your slides perfectly. Yeah, so I'll hand over to you. Thank you, David.
Good, thanks, Sam. Yeah, I thought didn't know quite how to pitch this, what level to pitch this at, or indeed haven't timed it particularly, but I think it'll probably be okay. I make games, so it'll be more talking about the game side and what I've learned. So these things really, a little bit about us, the company, and then a couple of thoughts that I had, and then a little bit about the game that we've recently released at the end. Okay. Okay, so this is me, 10 years of publishers, mostly EA, 10 years running console companies, mostly a company called Relentless, 10 years running mobile free-to-play companies, mostly Mag Interactive, and then in the last 6 months I've been running a blockchain game company called Playmint. We're all game natives, 6 months old, 20 of us currently, and growing fairly quickly, venture-backed, so we're off to the races. Right, I'm having problems stepping through this. Okay, so I think in a way Tom covered a little bit about this already. A simple way of thinking about what Web3 is, and I would say that blockchain is part of Web3. Web 1, the first version of the internet, was pretty much a read-only version of the internet where people go to look things up. Web 2 was where people started to contribute. So things like Facebook and Twitter, and people, and really a lot of the internet started to be built from the participants, the internet contributing to it, building something bigger. Web 3 is a new idea, sort of read, write, but also own. And by that you could say, in a sense, who is it that owns your Instagram pictures that you upload? Who is it that owns the tweets that you put out there? In a sense, you feel like you own them. Indeed, you know, the game items that you have, who really owns those? Certainly the person making money out of your tweets or your Instagram pictures is not you. So in a sense, even if you own them, then you're not really making any money out of them. And maybe that's fine, maybe it's not. But I think that's certainly something that's being tested with this idea of Web3. What about if the people who actually own the things, their digital items, rather than essentially giving them to other companies? So that's really sort of how I see Web3 and blockchain, and is a technology that powers that, I suppose, and blockchain games are a part of Web3, a relatively small part. As I say, I'm struggling to... Okay, so yeah, first of all, my YouTube analogy, bear with me. So I won't pretend I'm a YouTube historian, but I'm really speaking from the context of somebody that consumes it, really. About early on, like a couple of years into YouTube's history, they made a change that said, we will, if you make great content that people love, then we're happy to share the ad revenue with you. What is that, 50-50 maybe? And it sounded like quite a small change, but it had a massive effect. And I tried to find a graph that illustrated it. I don't know if it really does. I think it was introduced in 2007, and it's always gone up loads anyway. So I'm not sure if it's a great graph to show. But the point is, I think that when YouTube said, you stand to make some money if you create a popular video, then I think it had a dramatic effect on the content of videos being uploaded to YouTube. Some good, some bad, but everybody was trying to create content, well, not everybody, but certainly a large proportion of content creators were now motivated to try and create content that a lot of people enjoyed watching. And of course, you know, YouTube ended up being an enormous platform for watching videos. You don't need me to tell you that. But I guess my point is that change, the idea of sharing the revenue with the content creators, had a massive effect. I think it's probably something like this, that if you think about all the people that are motivated by financial incentives on YouTube, those content creators, some are millionaire YouTuber. This in no way is representative. It's not a real chart. Some are millionaire YouTubers, some make a living from YouTubers, a larger amount make pocket money, and the vast majority, I'm sure, are just one of the YouTubers that make no money at all. But I think that the result is that for me as a consumer, and the vast majority of people using YouTube are the consumers, then it makes for good content. All those people trying to make great videos for me to watch. And I think that, and the reason I mention that analogy is that I think that's similar to what I think we'll see happen when we motivate players by saying, if you do cool stuff in our game, and we'll decide what's cool, by the way, you know, if you do behavior that we like, if you're doing things that people like watching or interacting with or running leagues or whatever it is, helping out in the community, then we will incentivize you in a financial way. And I think it's hard to predict exactly what the end state of that's going to be, but I think it's going to be similar in size to what happened when YouTube said we'll incentivize your content creators. So it's not it's not science by any means, but it's a thought that I have along the way of building blockchain games. So I think we're going to see something similar to that. That's my YouTube analogy. The second thing is about DNA structures, so to say. And I was thinking back to 2000, and then a story from 2013 that occurred to me a couple of weeks ago. And I was running a company called Relentless at the time, which made PlayStation games for Sony.
Hello. Welcome back. And for those who was watching the live feed, thank you very much for watching. I will put the link in the chat if you'd like to watch the rest of that. It is on YouTube. Oh, I haven't sent it to everyone though. It might be useful here. Great. So our next speaker is Dom from Ukie. He is actually the EDI coordinator here, and he has a very interesting topic, which is how EDI can empower students on their journey into games. So yeah, Dom, thank you so much for joining us.
No problem, my pleasure.
Lovely. We've got a few minutes, so just before you start, I just want to remind everyone that if you've got any questions, put it in the chat. The more you ask, the more you learn. So please don't be shy, as well as if we are live streaming on YouTube as well. Any YouTubers, you can put your questions in that chat and we'll read it back to Dom after his talk. So yeah, over to you, Dom.
Amazing, thank you. I hope everyone's doing good today. I'm going to just share my screen. I won't be sharing my screen for the entire talk, just for everyone's knowledge, but I will be sharing some of it. So hopefully this is seeing correctly. Excellent. So I hope that's seeable, viewable, some of that technical lingo, but hopefully my charm will make that seem okie dokie. Nevertheless, thank you again for tuning in to my session. Fundamentally, I'm here to tell anyone who's listening or watching how EDI/equality, diversity, inclusion can empower your journey as a student into the games industry. Just to give some context to me, as Kirsty mentioned, I am the EDI coordinator for Ukie. I'm also an autistic play ambassador, who are the UK's leading autism charity. So I help them spread awareness and do activities for the games industry around autism, but also overall neurodiversity. And as I've mentioned on my slide, I've been humbly nominated for some nice awards. So I'm really grateful for the work I do, and hopefully I will show some of you today the value of that work. But just as a little kind of introduction, what is EDI? Obviously, it's equality, diversity, inclusion, but what does that actually mean? So with equality, it's making sure everyone has equal access and opportunity in line with their needs, the balance within their lives, and making sure people are protected from being discriminated. What some of you may have seen is equity being used a lot of the time to replace equality. And I would say they're very interchangeable, but they should always be linked and never equally both forgotten, because some situations require equality as the driving force, while other situations require equity, which the only difference with equity is you're making sure everyone is on a fair playing field, which in some cases is necessary to ensure everyone gets those equal opportunities. So it's really important to kind of leveling and making sure there's accountability. With diversity, it's ensuring that we see the differences, the uniqueness, and respecting and valuing people and those differences they have. So that might be appearance-based, but also there are invisible lens diversities, as we call them, and those are elements such as autism, your social economical class. So that's based on, you know, your parents working jobs, that's based on your upbringing and other financial elements that kind of build up some of your background. But then there's other aspects such as mental health. All these kinds of things that you can't see on the surface level play an important part, because each of these kinds of diversities form you, but they don't define you. It's always a part. And as I like to say, everyone is an amazing, wonderful mess. And sometimes it's about discovering that mess. But when it comes to an industry level, we need to ensure we're respecting and valuing those differences regardless, to then thus make sure we're having an equal playing field. And obviously one informs the other. And I would probably say almost in this Triforce approach, inclusion kind of is the glue that holds it all together to ensure that people are feeling valued, feeling involved, regardless of whether they're within a diversity group or a protected characteristic. As long as they feel included, they feel positive, and they're a part of the process, it all adds up. Just another factor to note is that although we say EDI, specifically I chose that just because it rolls off the tongue and just came to my mind one day as my title. It can be seen by different acronyms at different organizations. So, you know, you may see DNI, DENI, DNI. There's other acronyms such as IDEA, which stands for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility, and a few other ideas that I've seen for groups called. Fundamentally, they're all within the same kind of space of just championing diversity, making sure inclusion and equality are at the forefront of the games industry. It's just people prefer different acronyms, which is again brings into that differences. Yeah, there's one group, there's one company with a diversity committee, and they call it I think it's Jedi Knights, and it's justice, equality, diversity, and inclusion, and then obviously Knights. And obviously they don't make that too public, and that's why I didn't mention which company, so then the IP police don't come after them, because obviously that still plays a part into things. But I must say, like, some of these acronyms, absolutely love, and that's part of the fun element. Small fun element, but you know, we're in the video games industry. You know, geeky aspects are appreciated. And I also just wanted to kind of highlight discrimination, which is often the main kind of source of negativity that you may see in relation to EDI. And, you know, discrimination is the unjust distinctions and to exclude people. And it often overlaps with harassment and bullying. Overall, it's the treatment of people negatively, badly, based on either their protected characteristics or other forms of definition that people wish to use. And it's not great, but it's important to know, because obviously it is to be transparent as possible. It's a reality of life, but that's part of the reason why this work is so important, to challenge those discrimination and those unconscious biases and other forms of negativity, to make the workplace and everyone within it feel more included, and widen that out to the whole industry. So what does this mean for the video games industry? Again, I think it's really, really important now to the games industry. We've still got plenty of companies that don't see the value, but I will say this: the games industry has just accelerated with EDI over the last 5 years. It does help when you are within a 2-year lockdown, but I think, you know, for all the negativity that the lockdown brought, there was some humbling aspects to the lockdown from a work perspective, of course. And that was like a lot of the leadership that said, oh, you could only work from home. No, you could only work from the office. You could never work from home. Correcting myself there. You know, that was the perspective for years on years, and you rarely see anyone supporting working from home approach, with the fair few majority being freelancers who would do it. But now you've got probably more than half the industry that put it into question and have it laid out and ensure people can remote work, flexible working, hybrids. And these are all aspects to do with inclusion, with diversity, that overlap and become important elements to the games industry. Along with that, obviously making sure our games are accessible to as many people, making sure as much talent can come into the industry is becoming more and more vital. Some could say it's due to the skills gap that's currently in the games industry, which does play a part. However, I think what we're starting to see is a new generation of leaders is forming, or at least many people who have been in the industry for 5 to 10 years are the almost factors to change that's influencing the wider industry into it becoming more inclusive and considering diversity and empathy across the board, which is all a great sign and equally allows me to help encourage, empower, and amplify that through my role. It's a lot of hard work. And, you know, when we talk about equality, diversity, inclusion, it's quite broad. You know, there's so many different factors to consider. There's so many overlaps with HR, recruitment, workplace, you know, production analysts, you know, all these kind of different elements play a part, but equally it's that intersectionality which brings forth the importance of equality, diversity, and inclusion. Because without that intersectionality, I think it would lose a lot of its importance for multiple, you know, leaderships, middle managers, and so on. It's thanks to that approach that gives it that almost authentic impact on people, because we're all human at the end of the day and it all affects us. Obviously, some places may prioritize it differently, but overall, these are important aspects to the human experience, and we need to, again, empower it, amplify it, and ensure that people do feel happy and can live and work, because we do not live to work, we work to live. And that's an important aspect to consider just for any type of work you do. But I would definitely say it's an approach that the games industry is much more willing to adapt to over the last couple of years. And as I say, it's worth it, because not only does it allow much more of anyone watching here to get involved in the games industry, it will allow the content we create to be more representative, more deeper in, you know, content. You know, imagine, you know, I mean, one of my favorite things to note, I don't have a specific example, but I had a lot of industry friends tell me that, you know, in the early 2000s, you would have investors and stakeholders say a game with a female protagonist could never work. And yet look at the games that are coming out now. You got Horizon Zero Dawn, the Life is Strange series, the upcoming Forsaken. These are all games with female protagonists that it makes no difference to players because they are enriched content-driven games. And that's the important aspect. Obviously, the representation is vital because, you know, by seeing yourself within that content, you're more likely to go towards it, be involved in it, and really drive it home as part of your kind of norm. But equally, it kind of destroys some of those old stereotypes with those kind of aspects within the game industry. And it's really important because, again, people want to feel that they're seen and heard. And that's not just for players, that's also for developers, because, you know, I would say, just using Pixar as an example, Pixar, through their behind the scenes for their films, very much focused on the staff and bringing out the filmmakers' processes. And I think we have done that with games, but I think there's so much more we can do around that. We can really explore some of these teams as, you know, ways that they've made these games. What did they think about? How did their lived experiences conjure those games into existence? And that again brings their diversity, their wealth of expertise and knowledge, and overall an empowered culture of add and inclusion is important to craft those games. So these are just some of the factors. But from a more business perspective, by having diversity in your game, you're opening it up to wider audiences, especially if you input accessibility features into your game. You know, the more and more people can play your game, the more and more people can buy your game. Thus, there's that business value, but there's so much more than that business value. One of the ways that I do my work around EDI is through the Raise the Game initiative. It is an industry-wide initiative ran by and facilitated by Ukie, but we work with over 200 organizations to really bring it to life and make it happen and exist. And it's important to note that within the Raise the Game, we do have an education/academic pledge partner tier, which is kind of one of the ways that we've started to kind of think about the student experience around EDI through the work I do, making sure that from a college, university level, those organizations are committing to these values. So then they in turn have that commitment and responsibility to all of you as students or as graduates to really not only help you kind of know about these elements, but also to empower you further. Because if your university doesn't really endorse, you know, female developers going and creating the next big hits, then it doesn't really speak well for how they're going to support you. So it's really important that we consider these experiences. And then, oh, I clicked the link by mistake. That's what happens when you press links, but it's all good. But equally, we also have another initiative called Video Games Ambassadors. And obviously these two initiatives are much more passive ways of empowering students. But I really wanted to put them on your radar because, again, Raise the Game is that kind of industry approach that's slowly bringing students into its activities and events, while Video Games Ambassadors is directly kind of intended to support students. You know, through this initiative, we are working with Into Games, which some of you might know, some of you might not know, and if you don't know, they're an amazing organization who support the entire education infrastructure within games, from helping people acquire mentorships, apprenticeships, do workshops, generally endorsing and empowering students to get into the games industry with an underlying priority of ensuring that diversity and inclusion is at the top forefront of how they do that. Because again, we want as many talents to come in and feel welcomed into the industry as possible. But working with them, we put on the Video Game Ambassador program, which is all about bringing current industry talent in to tell students, you know, how, you know, to give them career talks, to give them workshop opportunities, and really bringing some of those key players, not only, you know, not only from a job perspective, but from those that are making those advocating diversity changes within the industry, seen to students, so they not only have a role model of a potential job, but they have a role model of an overall person in the industry. that they can see, look up to, and hopefully get the support they need and aspire to be a part of and be the next role model of industry. The number I've put here is a bit old, but we do have over 600 VGAs currently, and we are slowly working on a student version of the Video Games Ambassador Program, which will allow students like yourselves in college and university to be able to go and talk to primary and secondary school students about the amazingness of education. And kind of, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, just so I can really go into the more depth tips of how to empower your journey through equality and diversity. But just to kick it off, we're hoping through the VGA's students program is going to be a way of empowering you guys to kind of think about not only your careers, but then think about your kind of status as someone going into industry and embedding that into younger generations to encourage even more people to consider careers. Do keep an eye out on those details. It does date this talk a bit as a recorded process, but again, hopefully my child will just be like, oh yeah, that's fine. But equally, it is really important that, you know, we're now coming into an age where, again, mentioning lockdown, you know, things are starting to happen in person again. We're starting to have hybrids. We're still deciding, you know, how formats are running, you know, flexible working, remote working. And with all this kind of still not fully grounded yet, it's a really important time for professionals like myself to show students how actually equality, diversity, and inclusion can empower your journeys and actually allow you guys to be almost some of the decision makers in how the industry should look. Because at the end of the day, you are all going to be those, you are one day going to be the decision makers regardless. Because if you really want to be in the games industry, you're going to get a job. You're going to find your place. And it may take time to find your place. And obviously that would be a separate talk of how you find your place and how you do that. But once you've found that place, you know, how the landscape looks, how it's is going to be so important. But just to kind of give those 5 tips, and once I've given those 5 tips, I'll go into audience questions, just so that people can digest the tips and really start to gain a kind of insight of how EDI can empower you. And obviously I've already spoken about what it is, but I think the first tip that I would say that students should consider with EDI is looking at the values of diversity and inclusion and kind of having that at the forefront of your research into companies. So when you're ready, or when you're like looking at what job you'd like to do, what companies you'd like to work at, you're going to look at those companies and see what kind of games they've made and what kind of jobs they have available. But it's really important, on top of doing that kind of initial search, to also research into the company, see what kind of blogs they've created, see what kind of cultures that they embrace through their video content or their social medias. Because the more you look into a company and see what they value, you know, especially around diversity and inclusion, the more you're going to gain a sense of whether you're going to feel comfortable at that company or whether a different company would work for you better. So one way to empower yourself within your journey is by taking those EDI elements and putting that into your research when you're doing your job hunting. You're going to be able to kind of map out what companies are going to best support you more and what companies are going to really accelerate your journey. On a more kind of instant level that all of students can do straight away is if you look for advocacy organizations such as Limit Break, Bayman Games, Pock and Play, Outmaking Games, and even Into Games, looking at these advocacy organizations and seeing what events they put on and attending those events will really help you going forward into wider industry, because going to these organizations that have diversity and inclusion at the forefront of their agenda, you're going to have a much more smoother networking experience. You know, people are going to see you, going to have more friendly faces, they're going to be smaller, and you're going to have much more opportunity to kind of make the mistakes of networking that you need to become more polished. And so that when you come to those bigger events, you'll not only have friendly faces that you've already met at these smaller advocacy driven activities, but equally you will have built some networking skills that you can apply to those, you know, those bigger EGXs and those Develop Brightons events that you can really use to channel and be as professional but also as best yourself as possible. And you'll find that balance by using those smaller events as kind of your avenues for testing and experimenting. On top of this, knowing the progress of where EDI is in the industry at the moment can not only motivate you, it's easier said than done to say it can motivate you, but knowing where the industry is at on topics such as how do we support Black developers, or how do we support female programmers. These are all important aspects, because, for example, if you're going to be someone in this industry, you want to know how you're going to be supported. And if you don't know what the current kind of attitudes and the vibe is around certain jobs and certain atmospheres, you're going to walk into it a bit more naively than you want to. And actually, by having a look and seeing what the status and the vibes of the industry are around these different elements of EDI, you're going to have a better keen sense and insight into the industry. But also, again, coming back to that motivation point, you're going to feel more motivated. You know, if you see that this one company supports female programmers and they really empower them to do the best work they can do, you're going to be the best programmer you can be to get into that company. Or if you see that there's these group of organizations that are supporting employees, you know, through flexible working, you know, hybrid working, you're going to want to go to them. So again, kind of leads into the first point, but has its kind of different atmosphere to it. It really helps you. And then my fourth tip, and I will be done shortly, so we can get some questions just before my session ends. Knowing your rights and values as an employee, because again, you're students and graduates right now, but you will become employees one day. And actually, if you look at the kinds of rights you have as an employee and the values that are in, you know, law and other forms of equality for you, you're going to be much more equipped to know what will be good opportunities for you and what will not be great opportunities for you. You know, like, for example, it is a legal requirement for all UK businesses to provide employees a level of reasonable adjustments regardless, but especially if you are under a protected characteristic of the Equalities Acts. And that's a really important thing. And, you know, when I was a student / graduate, which technically you always are a graduate, but nevertheless, tangents aside, when you come out, you can be really naive and you really just want to get into industry, but that sometimes leads you into people taking advantage. And I definitely don't want any of you lovely students and graduates to be taken advantage of. So knowing your rights, seeing what's actually your standing as an employee is so important, just so that you get best treated, that you get the best journey and experience possible, and that the industry supports you. And thus it overall helps the industry together as well, because the morale of industry will increase and be better. But as my last tip before we go into questions, and it's a really simple one, have fun. You know, it's not, EDI is not just all about serious campaigning. You've got to be having fun. You've got to have that element of, you know, there's got to be some seriousness, but there's also got to be some chill and casualness, because by feeling included, you feel a part of a community, you feel welcomed, and fun is such an important aspect to that. And, you know, it's easily looked aside by, but actually, if you don't like what you do, you don't drive towards it, you don't feel it. And I think that's so important, when it comes to EDI work, because again, we want it to be serious, we want it to be grounded, but we also need to make sure it's fun so people don't get tired, don't get drained from it. So those are my 5 tips. I will be sharing an article in the chat where I've written these tips up as well, but I really wanted to go into depth today just to share with all of you a bit more what EDI is, what's kind of Ukie doing around EDI through some of its initiatives, and give you these 5 basic tips to really empower your journey. So I will take a look. I know, because I took a bit of time to talk, I have literally minutes just to answer 1 or 2 questions. So I will quickly see if there's any in the chat or the question tab. Or Sophia, have you got questions?
Hi, Dom. Hi, thank you so much for your really inspiring, interesting talk. Some great points there and great tips at the end as well. I don't see any questions in the chat. So if you do have any, now's your time. Dom, where can people find you if they want to get in touch? Your Twitter or LinkedIn?
So if anyone wants to get in touch with me, the best place I would say is LinkedIn. If you type in Dominic Shaw, might help to put in Dominic Shaw 94, you'll be able to find me there, and I'm more than happy to when you send me a request, if you put, I just saw you talk at the Ukie Students Conference, that would really help me, just so I know where you're coming from, and then I'm more than happy to answer any questions. You can equally find me on Twitter at Dominic Shaw 94, but I definitely would recommend talking to me on LinkedIn, because actually when you're asking me questions, and if you want me to help you look for like roles in industry and kind of give you some perspective, LinkedIn's a bit easier for me to do that on. So I would definitely recommend it. But if you want to hear what I say generally, then Twitter, then please follow me on Twitter.
Amazing. Thanks, Tom. Oh, Sean has a question. So similar to your point about knowing your rights as an employee, if one of the students watching today has concerns about their uni's approach to EDI or the approach of a prospective employer, do you have any words of encouragement for them and how they might raise this?
So when it comes to your actual university, unlike where a lot of game companies are discovering these processes, universities have these processes already embedded. That's where, that's partly why education is so important when we look at EDI, because of the overlap. But within universities, there are kind of governing committees or boards that students can access, and normally they're presented on the website, where they can talk to or send a message to either as a group or to certain members of those committees and highlight concerns they have. Equally, if you are within a university that's kind of categorizes its courses into departments, such as, arts and design and so on, you can also send your concerns of your course or any other aspects of a university to those heads of departments. Obviously, again, it will depend on, what element. So for example, if you're talking about you feel your library isn't making sure people feel included and, it's respecting people's space, that wouldn't be suitable for your heads of departments at universities. It would be better to go to that kind of committee that's generally with each uni. And in terms of a games company, if you see something through social medias and such, I would definitely say using the research kind of aspect of looking into that further, because again, social media can be kind of good sometimes, but also negative, and it can really endorse gossip, and gossip can be fun, but equally it's not grounded in facts. So I would definitely say do a bit more research if you're concerned about a company, and if for example you've applied for that company, you as an employee have always the right to ask. Obviously, what I'll do is, like I say, I've put in the chat, put in the chat now an article that I did recently, not only giving those 5 tips, but also where I explain how you can actually ask companies a bit more around their quality, diversity, inclusion, because I don't want to interrupt the next talk. But equally, that's so important, because again, you need to be able to ask a company and be a part of that journey, where it's not the days now where the employee says something and that's it, the employer is right. It is a two-way street where employees and potential candidates or employees can have a say in that journey and make it together. Because, like I say, a culture of ad is better than a culture of fit. And that's, I'd insert loads of research into how that's proven, but I don't have time because there's an amazing speaker up next. But I want to thank everyone. And again, if you wish to reach out to me, please check me out on LinkedIn via Dominic Shaw, or if you want to hear some of the stuff I say or some of the stuff I like, the Twitter. But again, if you want to really deep dive and get my help on anything, LinkedIn's the best place. Thank you everyone for watching, and I'll shush my mush.
Thanks, Dom. We probably should have given him an hour slot.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Oh, thanks, Dom, for your really inspiring talk.
Right, and our next speaker, 1:30 on the dot, is Jay. Hi, Jay.
Hello, I hope you can hear me. I'm actually at the tobacco docks today at WASD, so I've just found a quiet corner. So I hope that you can't hear too much background noise.
No, the noise is fine. I mean, you're a bit frozen, but it's completely understandable. And we really appreciate you doing 2 events at once.
No, it's absolutely fine. It's such a pleasure. I do have some slides to share. So let me see if I can get that working. Let's see.
Well, while you do that, so students, we've got Jason from Arrogant Pixel. I absolutely love the name of this company. Whenever I see it, it just puts it on my face. So good. And Jay will be talking about the power of the student voice, which is quite an interesting topic. So yeah, over to you when you're ready.
Yeah, it's quite timely actually. There was a question in Dom's talk about how do we make change in our universities and on our courses, and also within our indie companies as well. And my talk is a little bit about that. So, but thank you so much for inviting me to deliver this talk. I'll just introduce myself really briefly. So my name's Jay. I'm the director and co-founder of Arrogant Pixel. We are a small indie company. We are most famous for a little game called The Tale of Doris and the Dragon. I'm the course leader for games design and animation at the University of West London. As you can see, I do a lot of stuff. I'm a board member at Ukie. I'm a former biz dev, business development manager at Curve Games. I've also been in education for a really long time. I've been teaching on games courses at college level, but these days I'm teaching undergrad and postgrad at the University of West London. And as if I didn't have enough to do, I'm also studying towards a PhD at Birkbeck College at the University of London. And that's me in a nutshell. I guess I get to plug my company a little bit. So we actually formed officially in 2015, but Arrogant Pixel is kind of best known for releasing The Tale of Doris and the Dragon. It's a point-and-click adventure series that got quite popular on several indie portals such as Newgrounds in 2015. And the original release of the game was basically, we put it onto Newgrounds, but then we released it again for Steam for episode 1 and episode 2. And then today, as of 2022, we are a team of, we just hired someone else. So we're a team of 9 developers based in London. We've been working on Doris for over 5 years. We made a demo, which did pretty well. And it kind of spurred us on to make a fully voice acted episode 1 and 2. And that's basically my game dev company. So if anybody wants to reach out and ask me any questions about indie dev, then you can absolutely do that. But this talk isn't about indie development. Most importantly, I'm a former student. So when thinking about how best to present to you today, I thought to put myself in the shoes of a student, which was really easy to do because I am, a former alumni of University of West London. I graduate with both a BA and MA course at UWL. I'm really proud and passionate about working games and education and want to see courses and students succeed in this industry. So when we are thinking about education, and from my perspective, the questions that I ask myself all the time is how do we facilitate excellent course leadership? And I thought that the best way to answer this question is to explore what actually makes a course excellent, right? and appealing to students who want to actually study games design and animation. So first of all, before I go into all of that, how did I end up working in games? So I'll do a little bit of background information for you. So I had a really amazing plan when I was 13 years old. I was going to be a rock star. But in between all of that, I've been using Photoshop and Adobe products since I was in secondary school, mainly to customize my MySpace page, but it kind of introduced me to graphics products. It kind of led to a general interest in CGI and production because I was super inspired by The Lord of the Rings, but not the film. It was the behind the scenes documentary. It was the 10 hours of the behind the scenes that I watched on repeat, basically, like when the movies came out. I am a huge fan of what Weta Workshop achieved on that film, but then I also became huge fans of Aardman, Pixar, and that basically led to my interest in CGI and animation. My very first game was in RPG Maker. I took a copy of the game to school on a floppy disk. But to be honest, it was later that I became more proficient in games and business development. But at the time, I don't think I ever considered pivoting to games. I don't think I even had a concept in my mind as to what a career in games could look like for someone like me. And that is because I love playing video games, but I wouldn't consider myself a hardcore gamer or even someone that kind of keeps up with playing the newest stuff. I'm the kind of person that plays the same comfy games over and over. It takes a lot for me to invest in new franchises, but I fall deeply and quickly in love with anything that I have a hand in actually creating. So basically, I had a little trouble choosing a direction. I knew I wanted to make stuff. I just didn't know what. It could have been in music, it could have been in films, but I guess I ended up with games because it kind of encompasses all of my interest. So now that you know how I ended up working video games, I'm going to talk a little bit about my student journey. So as I said, my initial interest was in music. So I went to college to study music performance and ended up actually meeting the person I would start an indie games company with 8 years later. Okay, so I did, after graduating from college, I went and did music management at undergraduate. So it was a slight pivot there. I realized that music performance wasn't something that I was ever going to be incredible at. So I thought, as long as I'm working in the music industry, then it should be fine. So I kind of pivoted into management because I was interested in seeing how the business of music actually worked. And then I also went on and did the master's straight after the undergraduate. But while I was doing my undergrad, I actually met the other two directors that I would later go on and form Arrogant Pixel with as well. So my student experience was really, really valuable to me. So even though I wasn't studying games design and animation, I actually ended up meeting my colleagues that I work with to this day. It was a very organic and slow process because Arrogant Pixel had been such a side gig for so long. And to be honest, I've been working as a university lecturer since 2015. So just after we founded Arrogant Pixel and just after I graduated from my master's, I got hired straight away from the course basically to deliver lectures. I've only recently took the plunge full time into video games, just before the pandemic actually. So I actually switched industries and fields entirely. So now I'm teaching on the game design course, which has meant that I have now become a student again. In order to qualify for promotion and to be a professor, I need to get a PhD. So I'm now studying project management, which I'm looking at from the games industry perspective. So I'm looking at how projects succeed in the games industry. The reason why I wanted to explain my student journey was I've been where you guys are. I felt very powerless and unsure of myself as an undergraduate. I didn't appreciate how important my time was at university. And in some ways, I wish I'd done more. It sounds like I've done a lot, but I feel like I could have really invested more time. There's so much I didn't know about how the course was run and had no understanding of the bureaucratic processes involved in making change. So now that I'm a lecturer, course leader, I'm looking from the other side. So questions that I'm asking myself is, how do I empower students to speak up and voice their opinions about the course? How do I make the student experience better? Okay, so first of all, I'm going to tell you what do students think and how do universities find out, okay? Because there's some proper channels here. So in an increasingly marketized higher education sector, you as our students have become our customers, but they're also far, far more than this. So my students are citizens of the university. Most are residents of Ealing or Brentford in West London, as well as members of societies, the Art and Anime Club, political associations, and so much more. In all of these guises, they can rightly claim to have some voice in the life of the university. And this voice goes way beyond how you guys consume education. Indeed, even in the narrower sense of a student's education, the language of the consumer in no way captures students' roles, identity, and need for a voice. Students are often co-creators of their learning, not passive recipients of a service. So these different identities and roles make the issue of the student voice really complex. And there's no doubt that the changes of the last decade or so have added further layers of complexity. Obviously, you guys pay more for your education. There are more full-time undergrads than ever before. Happily, the student body is also more diverse than it ever has been. And rightly, students are more confident in demanding what they need from universities and their lecturers. You should not and do not merely accept what the university or individual academic wants to offer. You should challenge us and make us innovate and change. University life has changed quite a bit even since I was an undergraduate, and much the better for it. However, truth be told, at the institutional level, like many universities, we've not always got things right, but importantly, we are always striving to do better. So when we're talking about the features of a good course, I'm considering what students actually want from us. So the current cohort of students in 2022 is really diverse and multicultural, as I was saying before. There are people entering higher education from every kind of socioeconomic background. And as such, having courses that are informed by issues equity and justice are of utmost importance. So we already take into account social, political, and cultural issues in order to craft a learning experience that is just. So in order to keep delivering a good learning experience, our facilities, such as libraries, equipment, and classrooms, should continue to reflect the needs of students. And a good course will capitalize on the joy of learning and challenge you to enhance your skills, knowledge, and encourage you to get involved. So not only should we be delivering course content that is informed by the latest industry trends, we should be concerned about cultivating a vibrant learning community. And modern university courses in games design should be career focused. Students want a degree that will be effective in the real world. So as a result, you should be expecting a course that identifies the skills, abilities, and knowledge required to obtain a graduate role in the games industry. Activities that encourage development of a professional portfolio, for example, or opportunities to collaborate with your fellow students or with other industry. You kind of want to be able to assess the student work fairly and consistently so that we are able to measure your growth as you kind of progress through the course. And then, of course, good courses are only as good as their instructors. They should be approachable, empathetic, and responsive, and can speak from experience when delivering the content. It's also incredibly useful to have teaching staff that are active and visible in the industry, as you know, we're able to leverage our personal network in order to secure high quality guest speakers or gain access to information, possibly help with work experience placements. Most importantly, a good course will be flexible to student needs and promote student agency. It should allow autonomy and enable opportunities for relevant and meaningful learning. Individual module assignments, for example, might involve students making choices relevant to their professional aspirations. We should provide space for students to make the course their own. And by responding to their wishes, we can make the course a better learning experience for future cohorts and score higher on any module or course review metrics. More for me, but you know, I thought that it would be good to put that in there. Now, how do we actually gain this information from you? So how do you drive change at university? Now, I'm sure if you have been a recent undergraduate that you've been hounded by requests to basically participate in the National Student Survey. It's actually not that old. it's undoubtedly been a key driver of this change in like responding to student feedback. In the past, staff at universities were free to ignore student views and feedback, but the NSS has highlighted the impact of staff's actions on their students and their learning. It's been a real force for positive change, and it's improved the experience of students. So at the moment, in a lot of universities, it provides the only opportunity for a consistent and coordinated voice for students. So it provides important external scrutiny of universities for the public and the government, and genuinely supports enhancements of what universities do. So it's really important that you actually fill those out, because if you want change, then you need to be able to like express it to your university. The other thing that you can do is utilize your student unions. They do an admirable job here, not least because they can actually force universities out of any bureaucratic comfort zones and ensure we engage on your terms, on the issues that you judge important. Student unions can also challenge government, which is perhaps one reason they're not always like the most popular flavor of the month. Also, but the thing is, the question I'm always walking away asking is, since student unions represent the entire university rather than specific courses, is it not difficult to establish how significant really is this issue for students? What other issues that students care about are not getting through? So embedding different ways to engage with the student voice will be new and challenging for many in the sector, particularly over the next few years as we enter more difficult and straitened times, especially post-COVID. Despite our near-term prospects, indeed perhaps because of them, embedding different ways to engage with the student voice will not only become more important, I think it will be critical for the sector's continuing success, both domestically and internationally. So I would lean on your course representatives. If you want to be able to drive change, you will need to speak to people that actually represent you within your course. So how is all of this information going to help you find a job in games? That's the most important thing, and that's why you're here, right? The industry is fairly new, and modern games design as a field of study has not been around that long, probably since like the 90s when ludology was even coined as a term. It's definitely growing in popularity. And the current market for talent in the games industry, especially in the more technical positions, require a degree and possibly postgraduate study, and and maybe a game credit to your name as well, depending on what role you're going for. The course is only as good as the teaching staff and the quantity. Sorry, let me roll that back. The course is only as good as the teaching staff, the quality of the content, and the facilities. We as staff members are actually quite limited in what we can pursue without formal paperwork from minute meetings with students. So the courses can only improve if students put pressure on university management and work with their course tutors to tailor your education. Improving a course means that you benefit by proxy long after you graduate. It is in your interest to work with your tutors to make things better. There is also a skills gap in the industry, unfortunately not for graduates. To me, in my head, the best way to solve this would be to produce graduates that are being trained adequately, so that they can fill roles and work effectively in a team. Therefore, the content, the software, the hardware that we have in schools needs to be updated constantly, and we need your help to be able to raise this to our line managers, basically. Making the most of your time at university and engaging only leads to good things. You don't need a brown nose per se, but interacting with your lecturers and hanging out with your classmates and proving yourself as a loyal and reliable worker, you'll find yourself getting recommended, pushed forward for opportunities, and inspiring your teachers to recommend that amazing book or a cool YouTube tutorial that you can watch. Get organized and support your course reps. Having a positive attitude and being respectful is always how you should approach communicating with anyone you wish to work in partnership with. Things never get done if both parties do not align. So if you want something from your course, don't just send a complaining email to your head of school. Ask your course reps to attend course committees and get involved with the student union and go through the appropriate channels so that we can actually implement this change. The university experience is still really valuable, especially since students are not 100% sure of the direction they want to you want to go in, it's like a good safety net. There's still value in pursuing an undergrad degree. You learn how to manage money, live on your own, maybe get a part-time job and pay your own rent. The experience of growing up and developing your social skills, emotional resilience is essential in approaching the world of work. Also, students drive change in the games industry as well by being vocal on social media about the standards that they would like companies and universities to adhere to. Sharing your experience with others will help you determine whether there are significant numbers of you that feel strongly about certain causes. In short, put time into your short stay at university. It goes by in a flash and you will wish that you did more. So I'll just end with, your grade matters, but your portfolio and breadth of experience is what will ultimately make the difference when trying to make it in games. Enjoy your time at university and really cherish it. And that's me. That's the end.
Thank you so much, Jay. That was
That's okay.
information. It was fantastic. I didn't actually know how much you do as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty busy these days. Yeah.
No.
There's no sleep basically in my schedule. I wouldn't recommend it though.
A lot of smoothies.
Mm.
Does anybody got any questions for Jay? If you do, just put it in the chat. There's no questions at the moment, Jay.
Okay.
But we do, I mean, if there's any last pearls of wisdom that you can think of just to pass on to people, put you on the spot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at an event today. I would just say that, like, don't be afraid of approaching people and talking to strangers. I know that doesn't really come naturally, especially when you're quite nervous and you've got anxiety about speaking to random people that you don't know. I totally get it. I still have nerves when I, go to events like this. But as a game student, you'll find that you get to actually meet your prospective employers. So I'd encourage you to just try to do as many of these conferences and events as possible. Just put yourself in a situation where opportunities could happen. That's what I would say.
Yeah. So basically, if anyone's at WES today,
Yes, say
Jay.
hi. Absolutely.
Just walk up and say hello. And if anyone wants to contact you directly, if they've got any questions, could you share your Twitter account?
Absolutely. So you can find me, like Dom, I'm probably most available on LinkedIn. So if you just search me on J1 Shin, you should be able to find me. I think that my Twitter is actually J1 Shin as well, but you will also be able to find me through all of the Arrogant Pixel channels too.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Still no questions coming in, but I think that was such a thorough speech.
It was a speech, wasn't it? I'm very passionate about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's important as students because it's so difficult, deciding what you want to do, and there's so much pressure as well. I think that you should look at a career as a sort of a long game. You might not get the first thing that you want to do straight out of the bag, but as long as you know that you want to work in industry and you don't really mind waiting for that role to come up, I would say that your job will specialize you. Right now, just generalize and just explore as many opportunities as you can, and then you'll land on your feet eventually, as long as you are engaging and you're talking to people all the time. The best advice that I can do is start networking early, get your LinkedIn in order, tidy up your social media, all of that stuff. And enjoy your time as a student. Honestly, I wish I did more. Like I say, don't take it for granted.
But you're a student now, so you better enjoy your time.
True. True, absolutely.
No, I think that's such a common occurrence. A lot of people from the industry keep saying networking, and it is just so important. And luckily, people are friendly, aren't they?
Oh gosh, the games industry is so friendly. I mean, like I said, I used to work in music, and it was definitely a lot more cutthroat, let's say that. But people in games are just so willing to just chat and just you know, we work in the coolest industry ever. We get to just talk about video games. Like, how cool is that, you know? So I'm sure that even if you are walking up to someone that's an industry vet, you will have common ground because you both love video games. So don't feel scared. They might be just as nervous. You just never know. You know, people are human at the end of the day.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's very down to earth industry.
I think so.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. Well, Jay, thank you very much for joining us, especially while you're at an event.
No problem.
And yeah, hopefully we'll both see you again soon at a conference again.
Absolutely. Please say hi if you bump into me.
Thanks again, Jay. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Right, yeah, so that's day one done. So yeah, thank you very much to everyone that joined us. I hope that you learned a lot, and hopefully that you'll join tomorrow. We've got, I think, about 6 people speaking tomorrow. Let me just check. And it's from amazing companies, End Dreams, Rising Games, Coots even. And then also we've got Transfuser coming in to chat to you guys. They're always brilliant. And then Kim from OPM. It's a recruitment agency, and they also really have some good advice to give regarding CVs, interviews, etc. So hopefully see you all there. And we'll kick off at 10 to 10 tomorrow. So do join in. Again, we will still be live streaming on YouTube, and obviously we'll be on Zoom. It's exactly the same link that you used today. So we thought that we'd make it nice and easy by having one link as opposed to trying to find which one's for which event. But yeah, have a lovely day, guys.
Thanks, everyone. See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.